Hello Warhammer Explorers. Before we dive in, hit subscribe so the next transmission isn't lost to the warp. Every click tells me to keep building this universe with you. What if Captain America became the Emperor of mankind? Steve Rogers stands on a broken New York street, while the sky burns with colors no human eye should see. Doctor Strange tells him the storm is a wound in time that leads to a war so cruel, it will swallow Earth if no one goes to its heart. Tony presses a small device into his palm, a ring of metal around a shard of the Tesseract, and says it will throw one person into that future war to act as an anchor. Strange warns that if Steve goes, his body, his soul, and even his memories may never find the way back, and the storm will bend him as much as he bends it. Captain America closes his hand around the device, whispers that freedom is worth the cost, and steps forward as blue light tears open and drags him screaming into the warp. The first thing he feels is cold. Not the sharp cold of ice or snow, but a deep, crushing cold that grips his bones and his mind at the same time. Steve tries to breathe and finds no air, only pressure. He sees flashes in the dark, a skull of gold upon a throne, a galaxy in chains, worlds burning in silence. Stars stretch like threads, then snap. The fall ends with impact. He slams into something hard enough to crack stone and bend metal. His shield takes most of it, but the force still hammers through his arms and spine. A shockwave rips out from the crater and rolls down a vast street lined with towers of grey stone and black metal. Sirens wail. Alarms scream in a language he does not know. He forces his eyes open. Above him, the sky is a storm of fire and purple lightning. A tear hangs there like a wound in the air, bleeding light. Great ships drift beyond the clouds, shaped like cathedrals and guns at the same time. Their sides blaze with script and skulls. Smaller craft streak down like falling stars, leaving trails of smoke. He smells ash, oil, and blood. His fingers close around familiar weight. The shield is still in his hand. Its star is bright even through soot and dust. The small ring of metal Tony gave him is welded now into the center of the star, its blue crystal dim but not dead. It hums against his skin with a strange, heavy rhythm. "Move," someone shouts. The voice is raw and frightened. Steve pushes himself up and sees people running in all directions. They wear grey fabric and stiff armor plates, each with a small double-headed eagle stamped on it. Some carry boxy rifles, spitting red beams. Others clutch small children and battered bags. They keep glancing up, as if the sky itself might fall. Steve's ears ring. His ribs ache. But there are civilians in the open and guns firing nearby. That is enough. He stumbles out of the crater. A blast slams into the street 10 yards away. Stone and metal leap up like water. People scream. Steve lifts the shield without thinking and sprints toward the sound. A woman trips, dropping a child. Dust swallows them. He dives. The blast wave hits his back as he wraps an arm around both of them and drags them closer. Shards of steel and rock slam into his shield and armor, but the worst of it glances off. The woman sobs. The child clings to his neck, small fingers shaking. "You're okay," Steve says. "I've got you." The words may not be in their language, but his tone is firm. He points back the way they were running. A broken archway leads into a bunker lit by red lamps. Men in grey armor wave frantically, rifles slung over their shoulders. "Go," one of them yells. "To the shelter. Move, move." Steve helps the woman and child to their feet and pushes them toward the bunker. Another explosion hits behind them, closer this time. He turns to face it. Figures move through the smoke. At first, he thinks they are men in heavy armor, but as they draw closer, He sees they are something else. They are taller than any person he has met, almost twice his height, wrapped in thick plates of black metal trimmed with gold. Each step shakes the ground. Their helmets are horned and cruel. Symbols twist on their armor, burning like brands on the very air. The front warrior lifts a weapon as big as a cannon. Red light builds at its mouth. Steve throws his shield. The star flashes as it spins. The ring in its center flares. The shield hits the blast a heartbeat after it fires. Light and metal clash. The blast buckles, folds, and then ripples out in a shockwave that tears windows from towers, but leaves the bunker door intact. The giant warrior staggers, then steadies. Its helmet turns toward the shield, now pinned in the rubble at its feet. Codex note: Unknown warrior class. Uses a circular relic to bend directed energy and kinetic force, suggesting a mobile void or warp-anchored barrier effect outside known Imperial patterns. Steve runs. He darts across the broken street, using chunks of stone as cover. The giants fire again and again, their cannons roaring. Red beams cut through towers and blast statues into dust. One beam grazes his left arm. Pain stabs down to the bone. He bites it back and keeps moving. He reaches the fallen shield and rips it from the cracked pavement. The nearest giant swings a chain-bound blade toward him, teeth whirring like a saw. Steve ducks under it and slams his shield into the warrior's knee joint. Metal dents. The giant grunts, caught off balance. Steve follows with a punch to the side of the helmet, then a kick to the chest. It is like hitting a tank, but the warrior shifts half a step. That is all he needs. Open fire, someone yells. The grey armoured soldiers have formed a line behind him. They raise their rifles in shaky hands. Hundreds of red beams slice through the smoke, hammering the tall warriors. Sparks and chunks of armour fly. One giant falls to one knee, limbs jerking. The leader roars in a language Steve does not know. He feels it in his chest. The sound is full of hate and something worse, like a prayer to darkness. The air around the giants warps, bending light. Shadows twist and reach. Steve feels a tug at his mind, a pressure that tries to sink sharp claws into his thoughts. He draws a slow breath and plants his feet. "No," he says out loud. "You don't get in." The ring in his shield warms. A faint blue glow spreads from the star in the center, crawling over the shield's face. The pressure in his head eases, not gone, but held at bay. The giant's helmet turns toward him again, as if surprised. "Who in the throne's name is that?" a soldier whispers. Steve charges. He slams into the nearest giant, using its wounded knee as a step. He runs up the leg, driving the shield into the chest. The impact dents the black armor deeper and throws the huge warrior backward. They both crash to the ground. Steve rolls off, gasping. Another giant raises its cannon, aiming at him point blank. A roar splits the sky. A new shape drops through the clouds, trailing fire. It is a gunship, all engines and armor, with wings like a predator bird. Symbols and purity seals hang from its hull. Heavy cannons on its nose blaze to life, tearing into the black-armored giants. Shells punch through cursed symbols and chain-bound armor. Two giants explode in showers of metal and flesh. "Emperor be praised," someone shouts. More gunships thunder past overhead. Beyond them, Steve sees other shapes dropping from the sky. They are like falling statues, wrapped in gold and blue or yellow armor. When they hit the ground, the earth shakes. These new giants stand a little taller than the black-armored ones. Their armor is cleaner, even in battle, marked with eagles and wings and fists. Their helmets are smooth, their eyes glowing with steady light. Their weapons are larger, their movements precise. Space Marines, a soldier whispers. The Adeptus Astartes, the Emperor's Angels of Death. Steve files the name away. Angels or not, they are on his side. One of them lands hard beside him, boots cracking the stone. The yellow armor is trimmed in black, with a clenched fist on the shoulder pad. The warrior's chainsword hums in one hand, a heavy pistol in the other. "Identify yourself, mortal," the giant says, voice deep and sharp through the helmet's speaker grill. "Captain America," Steve says, still catching his breath. "Steve Rogers. I'm here to help." The helmet tilts. The warrior studies him. "You fight well for one so small," the giant says. "I am Brother Sergeant Dallos of the Imperial Fists. Stay behind our line, and you may live long enough to receive the Inquisition's questions." Another blast slams into the street. The black-armored giants push forward again, chanting words that make the air taste like rust. The Imperial Fists answer with bolter fire, each shot a small exploding shell that tears limbs from bodies and shatters armor. Steve does not stay behind. He moves with the line, his smaller frame darting between the armored giants. He uses debris as cover, shield up, calling out positions with short, clear words. "Left flank, 3 incoming. Sniper on the tower. Get those civilians out of the crossfire." The grey armoured soldiers, whoever they are, listen. They draw back from exposed streets and huddle behind cover. They drag the wounded into bunkers. They fire in tighter volleys when he points out targets. Their fear shifts, not gone, but focused. One of the black-armoured giants charges straight at a cluster of soldiers, chainsword raised. Steve sprints to intercept. He slides over rubble, jumps, and slams the shield into the chainsword, knocking it aside. Sparks spray. The warrior backhands him with the other hand. Pain explodes across Steve's chest as he flies backward and crashes into a wrecked vehicle. He coughs and tastes blood. His ribs are cracked. His vision blurs for a second. The serum in his veins burns, pushing his body to knit itself back together as fast as it can. But even with that, this place hits harder than anything back home. He drags himself up again. The giant strides toward the soldiers, weapon raised. Steve runs at him again. He throws the shield, not at the warrior, but at the ground just in front of him. The shield hits, bounces, and catches the chainsword from below. The teeth jam. The weapon stalls for a second. That is enough. Bolter fire from Delos and the other Imperial Fists tears the giant apart. Steve calls the shield back with a practiced twist of his arm. It arcs through the air and slams into his hand. His arm trembles from strain. He swallows it down and turns to the next threat. Up to now, Steve has arrived in a fortress city under attack, met the human soldiers and the towering Space Marines, and joined the defense even while wounded and confused. The battle around him is huge. Far down the avenue, he sees tanks shaped like bunkers on tracks, each with heavy cannons and holy symbols carved into their armor. They fire into the distance, where the street drops into a pit of smoke and fire. Above, fighters weave between the great city-spanning guns that jut from towers like spears. Everywhere he looks, he sees the same double-headed eagle stamped on armor, banners, and walls. He hears someone shout into a Vox unit, a small box on their chest. "This is Hive Bastion Primus Command." The voice crackles from multiple units. Enemy traitor Astartes have breached the outer curtain. Civilian columns are compromised. All available units fall back to Line Sigma. Repeat, Line Sigma. Fortress world, Steve mutters under his breath. He thinks back to the images he saw in the Dark Fall. A golden throne, a chained galaxy, a war that never ends. His gut tells him this is it. This is the future the storm showed him. He cannot fix everything at once, but he can hold this line. "Dalos," Steve calls, raising his voice to be heard over the guns. The giant turns his helmet toward him. "What is this place exactly?" Steve asks. "Who are we fighting?" Dalos empties his bolter into another, black-armored traitor before speaking. "This is Marnian's Gate," he says. "Fortress world of the Imperium. Every continent a wall, every city a gun. We stand between the holy terror of mankind and the filth of the galaxy." He gestures with his chainsword toward the advancing black-armored giants. "Those are traitor Astartes of the Black Legion," he says. "They serve the dark gods of chaos. They seek to break this world and open the path to the throne world. If they succeed, all mankind burns." Steve nods. The names are new, but the pattern is old. Tyrants, fanatics, people stuck in the middle. Another wave of Black Legion warriors sweeps down the avenue, backed by swarms of smaller figures in twisted armor and ragged robes. Some of the smaller ones throw fire from their hands. Others carry banners that hurt his eyes when he looks at them. Behind them, things move in the smoke that are not men at all. "Fall back," someone yells again. The line begins to pull back in chunks. Some soldiers panic and run outright. The gap opens too wide. The Black Legion surges forward to exploit it, like they can smell fear. Steve sees a group of young soldiers frozen in the middle of the street. They stare at the incoming giants, eyes wide. One drops his rifle. He does not have time to think. He sprints toward them, lungs burning. "On me," he shouts. "Form on me. We hold here." They do not understand the words, but they react to his voice. They huddle around him, lifting their rifles again. He plants his shield, drops to one knee, and holds the barrier at an angle. "Fire," he yells, slamming his fist against the rim of the shield. The ring in the center hums. Blue light spreads. The next blast from the enemy cannons hits the shield and bends. The beam splits into a fan that scorches the pavement in front of them, but does not kill them. The line of young soldiers fires into the confusion. One Black Legion warrior falls, then another. More Imperial Fists step up alongside him, forming a wall of armor and guns. Dalos's chainsword roars as he wades into the enemy, teeth spinning. For a moment, the enemy's advance stalls. Steve's muscles shake from holding the shield against the blast. Sweat runs down his back. The crystal in the center of the star is now hot against his palm, almost too hot to bear. He sees, for just a second, a pattern in the air in front of the shield. Lines and sigils, like the shapes Strange draws when he casts a spell. The warp pushes back. Its touch brushes his mind again, curious and hungry. He pushes back harder. "This ends here," he growls. The pressure fades, but the crystal does not cool. It stays hot, flickering, like it wants more. After what feels like hours but is only minutes, the immediate assault breaks. The surviving Black Legion warriors pull back into the smoke, dragging their wounded. The twisted infantry melt away into alleys and side streets, firing as they go. Gunships chase them, cannons still thundering. The street is a mess of craters, bodies, and ruined machines. The grey armoured soldiers slump where they stand, panting. Some laugh in shock. Others just stare at Steve. One of them, a young man with a shaved head and a scar over one eye, takes a shaky step forward. "Thank you, stranger," he says. "Without you, we'd be corpses for the carrion." Steve nods. "We did it together," he says. "What's your name, soldier?" The young man blinks, surprised at the question. "Trooper Callan, of the 117th Marnian Line Infantry. My lord," he says. "I'm no lord," Steve says. "I'm just Captain America. Remember this, Callan. You stood your ground. You saved lives. Don't forget that." Callan straightens, shoulders squaring a little. He nods. "Yes, sir," he says. More soldiers cluster around, some reaching out to touch the edge of his shield, like it is a holy thing. Whispered words float through the air. Saint, angel, emperor's sign. Steve feels his throat tighten. He has worn flags and symbols his whole life. He knows what people can do to them and what they can do with them. Power and hope both start with belief, but he also knows how belief can be twisted. He pulls the shield back gently. "Get your wounded inside," he says. "Secure your lines. This isn't over." Darlos steps closer. "The commander of this hive demands your presence," the giant says, "and the Inquisition demands answers. You will come." Steve nods. He is tired and his ribs still ache, but he knows better than to refuse the people who hold this world together, and he needs answers just as much as they do. "Lead the way," he says. The command center of Hive Bastion Primus is buried deep under layers of stone and steel. They take him there in a lift that hums with old power. Troopers with rifles and priests with swinging incense burners share the cramped space. Darlos and 2 other Imperial Fists stand like statues, barely fitting under the ceiling. The smell of oil, sweat, blood, and thick incense mixes into something heavy. Steve leans against the wall and breathes slowly. His body is healing, but there are limits. Even enhanced muscles and bones can crack. Even his heart can tire. A dull throb has settled behind his eyes, where the warp pressure pressed hardest. He glances at the shield. The star is steady again, the crystal dim and cool. He remembers Stranger's warning. This power will change you if you let it. The lift doors open. The command center is a long chamber full of glowing screens and old brass levers. People in uniforms and robes crowd around data slates and cogitators, talking into Vox units. Hollow projectors show the hive city from above, marked with lines and symbols. Red runes flash where enemy forces move. Green ones show their own positions. At the far end of the room, on a raised platform, stands a man in a dark uniform, heavily decorated with medals and purity, seals. His hair is iron grey. His eyes are tired but sharp. A long cloak hangs from his shoulders, its inner lining flickering with small hollows of countless battle honours. Next to him stands a woman in black armour that somehow looks more dangerous than the giant warriors behind Steve. She is not tall compared to the Space Marines, but her presence fills the room. Her armour bears the same double-headed eagle, but also a stylized eye with a skull at its centre. A rosary of spent shells and bone chips hangs from her belt. Her eyes are cold and watchful. Darlos speaks first. "Lord General Attica Vaughn," he says, bowing his helmeted head slightly. "Inquisitor Elira Varro, I bring you the anomaly." Steve almost smiles at that word. The man, Lord General Vaughn, looks him up and down. The woman, Inquisitor Varro, does not even blink. "So this is the stranger who fell from the sky and turned back a Black Legion spearhead with a shield," Vaughn says. His voice is rough but not unkind. "On behalf of the Astra Militarum and the defenders of Marnion's Gate, you have my thanks." Steve nods respectfully. "Captain Steve Rogers," he says. "I'm far from home, but I'll help however I can." Varro finally speaks. Her voice is calm, like a blade laid on a table. "Far from home," she repeats. "So far that your armor, your weapon, and your words match no world in the Imperial archives. So far that you arrive in the midst of a major chaos assault, wrapped in warp light, wielding a relic that bends the laws of reality. Tell me, Captain Rogers, who sent you?" Steve meets her gaze. "No one sent me to help your people," he says. "Where I'm from, A storm opened in the sky. It showed me worlds burning, chains, and a golden throne. My friends built a device to send me to the heart of that storm to stop it from reaching my world. I used it. I landed here. He lifts the shield slightly. This was the focus, he says. It came from an energy source we called the Tesseract, a cube that bends space and time. My world fought wars over it. I took an oath to keep it out of the wrong hands. Now it seems that it crossed more than just distance. Varro's eyes narrow. Tesseract, she says slowly. Warp energies bound in stable matter. A cube that shapes reality. This smells of the men of iron and worse. She steps closer. Do you serve any of the dark gods of chaos? She asks. Have you sworn pacts with warp entities? Do they whisper in your mind, Captain? No, Steve says at once. I serve people. I serve the idea that no one has the right to rule through fear and cruelty. If something dark touched my mind out there, I pushed it back. That's the truth. Varro studies him for a long moment. Her eyes drift to the star on his shield, to the tiny crack in its center where the crystal sits, still faintly glowing. What you carry is a threat, she says. A weapon the Imperium does not understand. A beacon in the warp, perhaps. It may be a blessing sent by the Emperor, or a trap laid by his enemies. Until I know which, you will be watched. Lord General Vaughn raises a hand. Enough, Inquisitor, he says. We are days, perhaps hours, from total encirclement. We need warriors, not more terror. You saw the feed from the surface. Without this man, Bastion Primus would have fallen. Varro does not look at him, but she lets the point hang. We need warriors, she repeats. We do not need new heresies. Steve raises his hand slightly. I don't ask you to trust me, he says. Not yet. But I won't stand by and do nothing while people die. So tell me what you're facing. Tell me what you plan to do. Then I'll tell you what I can do. Vaughn nods once, slowly. Very well, he says. Come, look. He gestures to the main hollow table. The projection shows a top-down view of Marnian's Gate. It is a world of fortresses and guns. The hive where Steve landed is only one of many, linked by armoured rail lines and underground tunnels. Massive shield domes cover key positions. Orbital defence platforms hang above like a ring of teeth. Red marks swarm over one side of the world. This is the Black Legion spearhead that just struck Bastion Primus, Vaughn says. They landed with support from a word-bearer's cult fleet 3 days ago. Since then, we have held them on the outer curtain with the Imperial Fists and Titan support. Walkers the size of towers stomp across the hollow image. Titans, machines as tall as small skyscrapers, each carrying guns big enough to carve valleys. Steve stares. Iconic, Vaughn says quietly, almost to himself. The Legio Invicta in all their steel glory. But as Steve watches, more red marks appear. New symbols blossom in orbit, beyond the ring of defense platforms. Lines of dark energy reach out from the storm in the sky. Void shields flicker. This is the new development, Vaughn says. Warp storm Abaddon's eye has widened. Our astropaths sense reinforcement fleets of unknown size. If they punch through the ring and link with the ground forces, Marnian's Gate falls. When Marnian's Gate falls, there is nothing between the eye and terror, but the phalanx itself and prayer. Steve folds his arms. So you're saying this world is the wall, he says. If it falls, your home, terror, dies. How many people live here? 7 billion registered souls, Vaughn says. Not counting press-ganged workers and uncounted hive scum. 7 billion. Steve feels the weight of it. How do you plan to stop them? He asks. Vaughn's jaw tightens. The standard procedure for a fortress world facing certain fall, he says, is a scorched defense. We will pull back to the inner hives. We will cull non-essential population to preserve food and air. We will conscript every able body. We will burn every district we cannot hold. If the worst comes, we signal segmentum command for exterminatus authorization. Steve stares at him. You're talking about killing your own civilians, he says, on purpose. Vaughn meets his gaze without flinching. Yes, he says, we do not have the luxury of mercy. If chaos takes this world alive, they will twist every soul into a weapon against terror. Better ashes than slavery to the dark gods. Varro nods once. The Emperor protects, she says, but he expects us to do our duty. Mercy in the face of chaos is treason to mankind. Steve's hand curls around his shield. I've heard that kind of talk before, he says quietly. Different flags, same logic. Varro's eyes flash. You would compare the holy Imperium of Man to your tyrants, she asks. You come from a small world, Captain. You have not seen what chaos does to a planet left intact. I have walked on worlds made of flesh and screams. I have seen cities turned into altars built from their own people. There are no good choices there, only degrees of damnation. Vaughn lifts a hand again, but Steve shakes his head. I believe you, he says. I've seen my share of monsters. I'm not saying the Imperium is them. I'm saying you're standing on the edge of becoming something like them if you forget what you're fighting for. He taps the shield. Where I come from, we have a saying, he says. We don't trade lives. It doesn't mean we never lose people. It means we don't choose to throw them away if we can find another way. Varro's mouth thins. And what other way do you suggest? She asks. We are outnumbered, outgunned. Our Titans are already committed. Our fleet is stretched across 3 assault vectors. The Black Legion commander is no fool. Let me hit him, Steve says. They both look at him. Give me a squad, he says. Your best, Space Marines, troopers you trust. Drop us where he is strongest. I'll break his spear. You pull your people back from this mass culling plan. You buy time instead of burning lives. Vaughn frowns. A decapitation strike, he says. We have already tried. Our kill teams were torn apart. The Black Legion commander, Warsmith Kazel, surrounds himself with ancient war engines and sorcerers. His fortress on the surface is shielded by warp storms. Our teleportariums fail. Steve lifts the shield again. Mine doesn't, he says. Varro's eyes narrow. You propose to use that warp-tainted relic as a transporter, she says. You would step into the Imperium itself and walk into a Black Legion fortress. You have no idea what that will do to your soul. Steve thinks of Strange's grim face, of the warning about change and cost. He feels again the hot pressure on his mind when the Black Legion's curse tried to crawl inside. He knows she is right. That's the fight, he says. I knew that when I stepped into the storm. If my mind cracks, if I turn into something you fear, then do what you have to do. But right now, I can use this to get somewhere your people can't. And I won't stand here while you plan to kill 7 billion of your own. The room goes quiet. The hum of machines and distant thunder of bombardment are the only sounds. Varro looks at Lord General Vaughn. Madness, she says softly, but perhaps the kind of madness we need. Vaughn closes his eyes for a moment. When he opens them, there is steel in them. We are beyond the point where safe choices exist, he says. Inquisitor Varro, if the Emperor has thrown us a weapon, we should use it. Brother Sergeant Dalos? The Imperial Fist steps forward. Yes, Lord General, he says. You will assemble a kill team, Vaughn says. Veterans only. You will escort Captain Rogers on this strike. Your objectives: identify and, if possible, terminate Warsmith Karzel. Destroy or cripple his command assets. Create enough confusion for our fleet to punch his reinforcements away from the planet. Darlos bows his head. As you command, he says. Varro takes a deep breath. I will bind this with the authority of the Inquisition, she says. Captain Rogers, you will submit to a purity scan before departure. You will allow a psychic brand to be placed upon your soul, so that if you fall to chaos, we may track and scour you. Steve nods slowly. Fine, he says. Mark me. Watch me. But hear this too. He looks between them. I don't fight for the Emperor, he says. I don't even know him. I fight for the people who can't stand in rooms like this and make choices. The workers pulling levers in these towers. The troopers in the trenches. The kids you think you might have to burn to save Terra. Varro's jaw clenches. That is sentiment, she says. The galaxy eats sentiment. Maybe, Steve says. But if someone doesn't carry it, all that's left is people like your Black Legion, and then it's not worth saving. Vaughn lets out a long breath. You will find that in the Imperium, sentiment and duty are not always enemies, he says. We endure so that mankind endures. If you can show us another way while holding the line, Captain, I will listen. He extends his hand. Steve takes it. Vaughn's grip is firm and calloused. Then we have a plan, Steve says. Up to now, Steve has entered the world of Warhammer 40k, fought alongside Imperial soldiers and Space Marines to hold a fortress hive, met a grateful secular commander and a suspicious Inquisitor, and proposed a risky strike that uses his strange warp-linked shield instead of mass sacrifice. Outside the command center, the fortress world groans. Shells fall, void shields flare. In the deep halls, priests chant louder, voices rising in appeal to a distant golden throne. Somewhere above, in the storm-torn sky, something vast and unseen turns its gaze toward the anomaly, who calls himself Captain America. Clear, stakes and a dangerous plan. A man out of time and place, ready to risk his mind and soul rather than accept a victory built on the ashes of billions. Steve stands in a small stone chapel deep under the hive. Candles burn on iron racks. Incense smoke curls in the air. A simple metal aquila hangs over a rough altar, its two heads staring in different directions. Priests in red and black robes chant low prayers. Their voices mix with the far thunder of guns. Inquisitor Elira Varro waits by the altar. Her black armor glints in the candlelight. A thin halo of metal and bone sits behind her head, held by a frame on her back. A hooded man stands beside her, eyes milky white, skin lined with scars. This is Astropath Karev, Varro says. He speaks in the warp for the Imperium. He will test your mind. He will place the brand. Steve nods. Do it, he says. The faster we start, the more people we can save. Varro's gaze is sharp. You do not fear what this will mean, she asks. Once the brand is set, the Ordo Hereticus can burn your soul from the galaxy with a word. Steve thinks of the Chitauri, Ultron, Thanos. He thinks of all the times he stepped onto a field knowing he might not walk off it. If I fall, you'll need that, he says. If I don't trust you with that much, I shouldn't be fighting beside you. Karev steps forward. His voice is soft and hoarse. Sit, he says. Steve sits on a low stone bench in front of the altar. He rests the shield on his knees, one hand on the star. The crystal in its center glows faintly. His chest still aches. His ribs are almost knit, but not fully. Karev's fingers are cold as they touch Steve's temples. Look at the Aquila, the astropath says. Think of who you are. Steve looks up, 2 steel heads, 2 hard eyes. No softness at all, but somewhere beyond stone and steel, he remembers other symbols. A flag painted on a trash can lid, a star on a chest, people in the streets, cheering, afraid, hopeful. "I'm Steve Rogers," he says quietly. "I don't like bullies, no matter where they're from." The room vanishes. He is falling again, but this time it is inside his own mind. Light and shadow twist around him. He sees the storm that brought him here, but from the inside. Threads of blue energy weave through red warp fire. Shapes move at the edges, claws, eyes, mouths. He feels something push against him. Voices whisper, promises, power. They promise that he could stop every war, crush every tyrant, if he will just give up the idea that people should choose. If he accepts that order must come from the top down at any cost. He grits his teeth. "No," he says. "People get a say, even when it's messy." The whispers hiss, but they do not reach his core. Another light appears. It is sharp and white, like a knife. It cuts through the warp shapes and carves a symbol into him. He cannot see it, but he feels it, searing hot and ice cold at the same time. It hooks into something deep, a tether back to this chapel, to Varro, to the Imperium. If he ever turns, that hook will drag. He gasps and jerks back into the room. Kerev staggers, blood running from his nose. Varro catches his arm and steadies him. The priests increase the speed of their prayers. "It is done," Kerev whispers. He is anchored, strange, like a nail hammered through 2 planks that were never meant to touch. But he is not yet claimed by the dark. "Yet," Varro says. Her eyes meet Steve's. For a moment, he thinks he sees a flicker of respect under the hardness. "How bad is it?" Steve asks. Kerev wipes the blood away. "You shine in the warp," the astropath says. "Brighter than most men. Not as bright as a psyker, but different. Your shield is worse. It howls and sings. It calls to anything that listens. But the brand sits between you and it now. If you fall, we will hear, and we will burn you." Steve nods. "Then let's give you no reason," he says, and stands. The kill team waits in the armor bay. The chamber is a forest of yellow armor frames and weapon racks. Servitors clank between them, grafted metal limbs holding tools and fuel lines. The walls are painted with old campaigns, sieges broken, fortresses held, Xeno slain. Brother Sergeant Darlos stands with his helmet under one arm. Around him are 4 other Imperial Fists in full warplate. Their armor is scarred but polished, covered in purity seals. Their names and roles flash in Steve's visor readout, projected by a small hollow device Varro insisted he wear. Brother Garen, Devastator, heavy weapons specialist. Brother Tiber, tactical, close fire support. Brother Hest, breacher, shield and melter charges. Brother Librarian Selin, psyker, battle mage of the chapter. A 5th figure is out of place among them. She is human-sized, in carapace armor marked with the Inquisition's eye. A shock of white hair spills from her hood. She carries a long rifle on her back and a rosarius around her neck. "Inquisitorial Agent Mara Jex," Varro says, gesturing to her. "My eyes and gun on the field." Mara gives Steve a short nod. "Try not to die out there, Captain," she says. "I do not enjoy writing long reports." Steve almost smiles. "I'll do my best," he says. Darlos turns to a large hanging hollow. The target glows red, a twisted fortress of black metal and stone, half buried in the ground like a jagged tooth. Guns bristle from its sides. Warp fire leaks from vents, forming a low, constant storm around it. "This is the Iron Moor," Darlos says. "Forward bastion of Warsmith Karzel. It channels power from the warp storm above to fuel his ground push. Its guns have broken 3 of our Titans and bled our lines dry. Mara zooms the hollow. Inside the iron maw are chain generators, summoning circles, and pens full of ragged human figures. Locals, she says, forced to work the guns. Fuel for sacrifices. Dalos nods. Standard doctrine is to level such a fortress from orbit, he says. Exterminatus would be cleaner still, but the maw sits under a warp umbrella. Our shells veer, our beams scatter. The enemy uses slaves and prisoners as a living shield. Even if we cracked the walls, we would kill millions of Imperial citizens. Steve's jaw tightens. So we go in, he says. We break the maw from inside. We free as many as we can. We shut down the guns. Dalos gives a short nod. We will insert by Stormbird gunship, he says. Drop landing inside the minimum bubble. Captain Rogers will then use his shield to step us through the inner storm layer. We aim for the heart of the maw. We kill Kazel if he is there. We destroy his warp conduits if he is not. Brother Librarian Selin speaks for the first time. His voice is quiet and measured. The warp does not like to be cheated, he says. Your relic bends it in a way I have never seen. I will stand with you when we step. My will and your relic may form a stable bridge, or we may be torn apart. Comforting, Mara mutters. Steve looks at Selin. What happens to the people in there if we fail, he asks. Selin's blue eyes are hard. They die screaming, he says. Or worse, they become weapons. There will be no mercy from chaos. Steve nods once. Then we don't fail, he says. The Stormbird roars through the upper atmosphere. Inside, the kill team stands in grav harnesses, locked to the deck. The deck shudders under their boots. Warning runes flicker on the walls. Outside, flak burst like small suns. Steve stands at the ramp, one hand on the shield, the other gripping a rail. Below them, the iron maw glows like an open wound in the skin of the world. Warp lightning arcs around it, purple and red. Its guns fire up into the sky, trying to swat them out of the air. Void shields at 15%, the pilot's voice barks over the vox. Storm density increasing. Hold course, Dalos says. We land or we die in the attempt. Another shell hits. The Stormbird lurches. Steve slams against the ramp, but the harness catches him. A panel explodes in sparks. Selin raises a hand and a bubble of blue light catches the debris before it can cut anyone. Steve looks at the shield. The crystal in the star is bright now. It hums like a live wire. He feels pressure against his mind, the same as in the chapel. The warp wants to get in. It wants to use this bridge. He closes his eyes for a second. He thinks of Brooklyn streets, of Bucky's laugh, of Sam in the sky, of kids playing under broken buildings after the Battle of New York, still finding reasons to smile. He thinks of 7 billion lives on this world, and many more beyond. I'm not your tool, he whispers to the warp. I'm theirs. He opens his eyes. Time to drop, the pilot yells. May the Emperor... The rest is lost in noise. The ramp slams down. Heat and light rush in. The Stormbird hangs in the air for a single breath over the warped ground inside the outer storm. Black-armored traitor Marines turn and shout, raising guns. Go! Dalos roars. The kill team leaps. They hit the ground like meteors. The Astartes' armor takes the impact and sends cracks racing out through the stone. Steve rolls with the fall, shield up, absorbing the shock with his legs and core. Bolter fire starts at once. Traitor Marines in black and brass pour fire into them. Shells scream past. One hits Hest's shoulder and explodes, tearing purity seals and armor. He grunts, but stays on his feet. Steve charges. He stays close to Dalos's side, where the guns are thickest. The shield flares, bending bolts away. He angles it so the exploding shells detonate above and behind them instead of in front. Target the generators, Mara calls, snapping off precision shots. Every shot she fires drills through a traitor's visor or weapon joint. Garen sets up his heavy bolter in a ruined gun nest and unloads. Streams of explosive rounds chew through a squad of Chaos Marines trying to flank them. Bodies fall, armor ruined. For a moment, the outer yard is theirs, but the warp storm deepens. Lightning slams around the fortress, forming a whirling ring. The air goes thin and sharp. Steve feels his skin crawl. "Now!" Dalos shouts. "Captain, the inner storm." They reach a central platform. Below it yawns a pit filled with warp fire. Chains hang down, each wrapped around screaming figures. Above, a swirling ring of red lightning turns around a core of black. Steve steps to the edge. His heart pounds. His hands shake despite himself. This is more than a simple storm. It is a door. On the other side, something listens. "Can you reach inside?" Selin asks, stepping beside him. "Can you feel the pattern of it?" Steve nods. "Yes," he says. It's like Stranger's portals, but broken. I can see where it wants to go, where they've forced it to go." "Then bend it," Selin says. "I will anchor your mind as you use your relic to cut a path. Think of the place we must reach, the heart of this fortress, the core, the main gun deck." Steve raises the shield. The crystal burns his palm. Blue light spreads across the star, then out into the air. It touches the red storm. Where they meet, the colors clash and spit. Selin places his gauntleted hand on Steve's shoulder. He begins to chant, words from a language older than any Steve knows. Light builds around them. The warp snarls. The brand on Steve's soul tugs and burns, strained between Varro's hook and the storm's pull. "Everyone close," Dalos calls. "Form on the captain." The kill team gathers tightly around Steve. Steve thinks of a point deep inside the fortress. He picks it from the hollow in his memory, a long chamber of guns and control thrones. He holds it in his mind like a target. "Do it," he says. The world tears. For a heartbeat, Steve is nowhere. His body stretches and folds. He hears 1,000 screams and a single, clear note. He feels something try to slip in through his eyes, his ears, his skin. He refuses. Then they snap back into place. They stand in a long, dark hall. Rows of massive cannons line the walls, their barrels pointed out through cracked viewports. Servo skulls drift between them. Chains hang from the ceiling, holding more bound workers and corpses. At the far end, a raised platform of black iron holds a throne of blades and cables. On that throne sits a giant in black and iron armor. His helm is built like a cruel furnace, with green light burning in its slits. Chains run from him to the walls and floor, feeding the fortress. A long, crackling hammer rests in his hand. Symbols of chaos and iron warriors are carved deep into his pauldrons. He turns his head slowly. "So," Warsmith Karzel says, "the anomaly walks into my heart." Codex note: short-range warp translation achieved through interaction of alien relic and sanctioned psyker, bypassing standard Imperial teleport rules, but exposing participants to acute demonic contact risk. He rises from the throne. Bolter turrets drop from the ceiling. Demon engines scuttle out from alcoves, their metal legs chittering, their maws dripping warp fire. Lesser Chaos Marines form up along the hall. "Kill them," Karzel says, almost bored. The hall explodes into motion. Garen opens up with his heavy bolter, cutting down the first wave of lesser Marines. Hess charges forward, breacher shield raised, Melter charges at his belt. Dalos and Tiber fire and move, precise, each shot taking a target. Steve moves with them. He uses the narrow space to his advantage. The shield bends incoming fire into the walls, which then crumble and fall onto demon engines. He bashes a turret aside with the shield, then slams it into a Chaos Marine's chest, cracking armor. Mara picks off enemy champions, her shots threading between the kill team without ever touching them. Selin hurls blasts of blue fire at demon engines, frying their warp cores. The hall becomes a mess of smoke, fire, and broken metal, but Steve keeps one eye on the throne. Karzel watches them, head tilted slightly. He does not rush in. He studies. Then he lifts his hammer. "Enough," the warsmith says. He slams the hammer into the floor. A wave of black energy rushes down the hall. It is not like the pressure Steve felt earlier. This is cold, not ice cold, concept cold. A dead silence that eats sound, light, and thought. The blue light on his shield gutters and dies. Steve feels himself cut loose. The tether he felt in the warp, the way he could sense patterns, all of it snaps. His limbs go heavy. His heartbeat stumbles. Selin cries out. The librarian's psychic aura flickers. His eyes roll back for a second. The blue fire around his hands goes out. He slumps to one knee, gasping. The demon engines surge forward. Dalos curses and steps in front of Selin, Chainsword roaring. He hacks down the first engine, but 3 more leap over its corpse. Bolter turrets spit streams of rounds again, now that the shield is just metal. Steve lifts the shield. The bolts hit and do not bend. They slam full force. He staggers back, arm numb. "What was that?" he gasps. Karzel laughs. "Curious," the warsmith says. "The thing from beyond the galaxy has a heart that beats in the warp, but not like ours. When you stepped into my fortress, your scent filled every conduit, so I tuned my hammer to it. A pulse of null frequency. No demons, no prayers, just absence." He lifts the hammer again. "It turns off what you are," he says. "In the command centers and Libria, they will later call it a null inversion field. Selin will explain that Karzel has forged a weapon that sends a sharp, empty wave through the warp, tuned to the strange anchor frequency of Steve's relic and soul. When the wave hits, it does not just mute psychic powers like a normal blank field. It cuts them at one specific angle, stripping Steve of his warp resistance and bending. Varro will say it makes him more like a normal man for a few heartbeats, just when the enemy needs him weakest. Steve, feeling it in his bones, will think of it more simply. He found my off switch. The warsmith swings again. Steve dives sideways as another wave of deadness rolls out. It clips him. His thoughts blur. Memories skip. For a moment, he is back in the ice, then in Brooklyn, then in a void. He hits the ground hard. A demon engine pounces. He rolls at the last second. Its claws tear gouges in the floor where his head just was. He slams the shield up under its jaw and heaves. The engine flips and crashes into a gun mount. "Cover the captain," Dalos roars. The kill team shifts. Hess throws a melter charge under a cluster of demon engines and dives back. The thermal detonation turns metal and warp flesh into slag. Tiber lays down a curtain of bolter fire to push back advancing traitors. Selin forces himself to his feet. Sweat runs down his face. His eyes burn. "I can blunt it," the librarian gasps. For a moment, "Captain Rogers, you must not let that hammer touch you again." "Working on it," Steve mutters. He forces himself up. He cannot feel the shield the way he did before, but he can still feel his own body. His muscles still respond. The serum still flows in his veins, even if something is trying to smother it. He looks at the floor. The hammer blows leave cracks with strange patterns. Each crack lines up toward the throne, forming a web. That web is a channel, a focus. "Dalos," he shouts. "He's rooted to this room. That hammer's wired into the whole fortress. We break the lines, we break his trick." Dalos grunts as he crushes a traitor's skull. "Then break them," the sergeant calls. "We will buy you seconds." Steve sprints. He races along the hall edge, leaping over bodies and debris. Bolts ricochet around him. He uses the shield as simple cover now, not a bending tool. He slides under a demon engine swing and slams his shield down onto one of the glowing cracks. The crystal flares. The crack shatters, the light in it going dark. Somewhere deeper in the fortress, a generator screams and dies. Karzel's helm turns sharply. "Interesting," the warsmith says. "You adapt. Good. It would be dull otherwise." He swings again. The null wave slams into Steve's back. His legs buckle. His vision goes grey. He tastes metal. But he stays conscious long enough to throw the shield at another crack. It hits. The crack breaks. Mara's voice cuts through the ringing in his ears. 3 o'clock, Captain," she calls. "Incoming heavy." A huge traitor in ornate armor charges him, twin chain axes roaring. Steve barely manages to raise his arms in time. The axes slam into the shield rim and bite sparks from it. The force drives him back into a wall. He feels ribs strain again. He twists, grabbing the traitor's arm and dragging him forward. The Chaos Marine overbalances. Steve rams the edge of the shield into the joint of the Marine's neck and shoulder. Armor plates crack. Bolter fire from Tiber finishes the job, punching through the weak spot. Steve drags himself forward. He breaks another crack and another. Each one makes the fortress shudder. Lights flicker, guns misfire. Generators whine in pain. Karzel snarls. "Enough," the warsmith growls. "You are not the only one who adapts." He lifts his free hand. Cables whip out from his armor and stab into the walls. The fortress itself responds. New lines of dark metal grow from the floor, bridging the broken cracks. The null field spikes. Selin screams as his psychic senses are crushed. He falls back, nose bleeding again. Steve feels like his bones are turning to sand. For a heartbeat, he thinks he is going to fall and not get back up. Then he hears something else. Screams. Human ones. From behind a side wall. He staggers toward the sound. A slit in the wall shows a glimpse of a work gang. Thin figures chained to consoles, eyes wide with terror. Chaos Marines stand behind them with whips and knives. "What are you doing?" Mara shouts. "Our target is the warsmith." "He's drawing power through them," Steve gasps. "He's wired this whole place into their blood. If we don't free them, we're just chopping at branches." Dalos curses in High Gothic. "The mission," he starts. "Children," Selin croaks. "I sense children." "That is enough." "Do it," Dalos snarls. "Hest, breach." Hest charges the side wall. He slams a melter charge against it and braces behind his breacher shield. Steve throws himself behind Hest just as the charge goes off. Stone and metal vanish in a blast of heat. They storm into the chamber. Rows of men, women, and children are chained to machines, tubes running from their arms into glowing tanks. Chaos sigils burn above them. Their eyes widen as Steve and the kill team burst in. "Down!" Steve shouts. "Stay down!" Chaos Marines spin toward them. Hest's shield slams into the first, crushing him against a console. Tiber and Garen cut down the others. Mara's bolt rounds find any who try to use the slaves as cover. Steve runs to the nearest console. He sees the pattern fast. The tubes feed into a big central conduit. That conduit pulses in time with the fortress guns and the cracks on the hall floor. He grabs the tube bundle and rips. Painful, but better than death on a chaos altar. Blood sprays. The machine screams in a pitch no machine should make. The fortress shudders again. The nearest slaves cry out, but some of their chains slacken. "Help me," Steve yells. The kill team moves. They tear cables, break chains, shove people away from spreading warp fire. Selin, still shaky, uses a small, controlled pulse of psychic force to snap locks without using too much power. The null fields fluctuate. Kazel roars from the hall beyond. "You dare," he bellows. "You dare steal my tools." Steve feels the dead coal lift a little. The crystal in his shield flickers back to life. Just a spark, but enough. He turns. "Everyone out," he shouts. "Back to the main hall. Move the civilians." Darlos hesitates for only a second. "Troopers, bodyguard the slaves," he snaps. "Hest, Tiber, Garen, form a corridor." They push back into the hall. Frightened workers stumble behind them, ducking under stray bolts and debris. Mara and Selin cover the rear, sniping anything that gets too close. Steve steps in front of them. Kazel stands at the far end, hammer raised, armor blazing with infernal runes. The cracks in the floor pulse erratically. Steve lifts the shield. Blue light flares again, stronger now that the fortress has lost some of its blood fuel. The next null wave hits, but the shield bends a slice of it aside. It still hurts, but it does not fully kill his edge. He walks forward. Every step is hard. His body wants to give out. His mind wants to slide away. But he keeps going. "You wanted to study me," Steve calls down the hall. "Study this. I don't leave people behind for your numbers." Kazel laughs again. "There," the warsmith says. "That is your weakness. You would throw away a victory to save meat. Good. That means I will win." He hurls a spear of pure shadow. Steve ducks and raises the shield. The spear strikes the star and bursts wider, becoming a cloud of biting darkness. He pushes through it, teeth gritted. He does not reach Kazel, not yet. Guns on the walls pivot to track him. Demon engines scrabble along the ceiling. Darlos and the others move up on his flanks, but waves of traitor marines slam into them. The hall becomes a grinding push. They cannot kill everything. They cannot reach the throne. Not with all these people behind them to protect. Not before reinforcements arrive. Steve knows when to press and when to cut losses. He glances at Selin. "Can you pull us out?" he yells. "Same way we came." Selin's hands shake. "I can try," the librarian gasps, "but the warp is furious. It will not be clean." "We don't have clean," Steve says. "We have alive or dead. Pick alive." Darlos snarls. "We came to kill the warsmith," he says. "We leave with his head, or we leave in shame." "We leave with these people," Steve snaps. "We hurt him. We broke his toy. We know his trick. We come back smarter. If we stay, we die, and he still wins." For a moment, Darlos's helm turns toward him. Then the sergeant nods. "Librarian," he says. "Do it." Selin raises his hand. He focuses on Steve, on the relic. The brand on Steve's soul burns again as Varro's hook tugs, feeling the warp tension. The world tears one more time. They are ripped away from the Iron Moor's heart in a storm of screams and light. They slam back into the Stormbird's hold. The gunship shakes as it pulls away from the fortress. Alarms howl. The deck is slick with blood and engine oil. Slaves, now free, huddle in the corners, weeping. Medici troopers move among them, checking wounds. Hest leans against a bulkhead, armor cracked open in 2 places. Garen's heavy bolter smokes, the barrel warped from overuse. Selin lies on the deck, chest heaving. His psychic hood sparks. Steve is on his knees. Every nerve feels raw. His head pounds. The brand inside him cools slowly, like hot metal sinking into water. The crystal in the shield is dark and cracked along one edge. Varro's face appears on a hollow. Her eyes flick over the scene, counting heads, scanning the freed civilians, noting the state of the kill team. "You live," she says. "You brought back thousands of souls. The Iron Maw's output has dropped by 60%. The outer guns are falling silent." "We didn't get Karzil," Dalos says. His voice is flat. Varro's jaw tightens. "We saw," she says. "His fortress is reconfiguring. He's angry. Angry enemies make mistakes." She looks at Steve. "And you," she said. "What did you learn?" Steve wipes blood from his lip. "He's smarter than we hoped," he says. "He built a weapon that can shut off what I am for a few seconds. A null field tuned to me. He's wired his fortress and his army into his slaves. He will keep using civilians as fuel and shields. We can't treat his strongholds like simple targets." Varro nods once. "Understood," she says. "Return to Bastion Primus. The Lord General calls a council." Up to now, Steve and the kill team have struck deep into the Black Legion fortress, freed slaves, and crippled a major gun bastion, but failed to kill the warsmith, and learned he can switch off Steve's special edge with a tuned null weapon. The War Council meets in a different chamber this time. The command center feels too cramped, too full of tired officers and flickering screens. Instead, Lord General Vaughn and Inquisitor Varro have chosen a strategium, a long, high room with a vaulted ceiling, hollow projectors along the walls, and a single massive table in the center. Steve stands at one end of the table. His armor is dented. His face is lined with new bruises. The Medicae wanted him in a bed, but he refused. Dalos, Selin, Mara, and the others stand behind him. On the other side of the table stand Vaughn, Varro, and a new figure. The new man wears heavy robes of red and gold. A bionic eye glows in his skull. His left arm is a mass of metal tendrils, each ending in a different tool. Symbols of the Adeptus Mechanicus cover him: skulls, cogs, and data runes. "Magos Dominus Hark," Varro says, "master of this world's forges and data vaults." Hark inclines his head. "Flesh thing," he says to Steve. "Your relic is interesting." Vaughn waves a hand, and the hollow table lights up. It shows the Iron Maw and its surrounding field. New lines and symbols mark what they learned. Pulses of black energy radiate from the fortress at regular intervals. "These are the null waves you described," Vaughn says. "Every time Karzil strikes the floor with that cursed hammer, a pulse travels through the maw and out into the storm. Magos Hark." Hark makes a small noise that might be agreement. "The pulses are not full blanks," the Magos says. "They do not create a general anti-psyker field, as a Colexus would. They are narrowband, targeted. Their harmonic matches the warp signature of the alien relic and the anomaly himself to a high degree of certainty." "In words he will understand," Varro says. Hark's mechadendrites twitch. "The hammer turns off your special defenses," Hark says to Steve. "It makes you normal, for a moment." "I felt that," Steve says dryly. "Your use of the relic as a teleport node also exposed its pattern to the enemy," Hark continues. "Every time you step, you sing your song to the warp. Karzil hears it. He can adjust." Varro looks at Steve. "So," she says, "you may have given him the tools to kill you." Steve meets her gaze. "Maybe," he says. "But we also saved thousands of people and crippled a fortress that was killing your titans. I'd say that's a trade worth making." A new voice cuts in. "And what of the souls you did not save?" it says. A priest in dark robes steps forward from the side of the room. Steve had not noticed him before. Thin and intense, with a burning gaze, he wears a tall mitre with the Aquila etched on it. A chainsword hangs at his waist next to a book bound in skin. "Confessor Malkian," Vaughan says, "Ecclesiarchy representative to Marnian's Gate." Malkian points a bony finger at Steve. "You walked into a nest of heresy," the confessor says. "You could have planted a holy bomb at its heart and sent Karzil and all his filth screaming into the warp. Instead, you chose to save a few, 1,000 workers, leaving the warsmith alive to crush this world. That is sentiment. Sentiment is weakness." "Those few thousand have faces," Steve says quietly. "Names, families. You can't build a future on their ashes if you didn't have to burn them." Malkian's eyes blaze. "You think the Emperor needs your lessons on mercy?" he snaps. "His mercy is that mankind exists at all. Every second he burns his soul to hold back the warp. Every day he lets scum like us crawl on our bellies in his light. When chaos knocks at the gate, you do not count lives like coins. You throw yourself into the fire with a smile." Steve's hand tightens on the shield. "People are not coins," he says. "They're the point. Where I come from, we fight to give them a chance to live, not just to die for an idea." Varro watches silent. Vaughan rubs his temples. "We do not have time for theology," the Lord General says. "We must decide how to use this new asset and how much risk we accept. We must also decide what to do with the civilian masses in the outer hives now that the Iron Moor's guns are weaker. I can still order culls and retreats. Or we can hold and trust that more strikes like this will turn the tide." He looks at Steve. "You saved lives," Vaughan says. "You also left Karzil alive. If he breaks through our lines tomorrow because you did not press the attack, the bodies will pile high. How do you weigh that choice?" Steve takes a breath. "I ask one question," he says. "Did we do everything we could to protect both the people and the future? Not just one or the other. Both. If there was a way to save those workers and still take Karzil's head for sure, we should have found it. But there wasn't. So we took the win we could, hurt him, and bought time without choosing to burn innocent people." Malkian snorts. "Spoken like a man who has never watched a world fail," he says. "I have, Captain. I saw a planet where we tried to save everyone. We held back, fearing to scorch our own. Chaos turned half the population into a living plague. In the end, we called exterminatus anyway. The screams lasted days. Mercy killed them, not wrath. Maybe your plan was bad before that," Steve says. "Maybe no one ever asked if there was another way." "And what other way would you teach the Imperium?" Malkian demands. "Less faith, more softness, fewer executions." Steve shakes his head. "No," he says. "More trust, more room for people to stand up, less treating them like tools or fuel. You want them to die for something. Let them live for it first." Varro finally speaks. "Enough," she says. "Both of you make points your hearts believe. Both of you hold pieces of a truth that runs through this rotten galaxy." She looks at Vaughan. "The captain is right about one thing," she says. "We have grown used to spending lives like ammunition. Sometimes it is necessary. Often, perhaps. But we have done it so long that we rarely stop to ask if there is another way. His presence is a test of that habit." She turns to Steve. "And the confessor is right about something too," she goes on. "Chaos is not a game. It does not stop because we wish for better. Every time we choose mercy, we must be sure it is not just fear of getting our hands dirty." She steps closer to the table. "This," she says, tapping the hollow of the Iron Maw, "was a test case. You chose to free slaves and retreat rather than press a risky attack. The result? Fewer guns firing on our lines, thousands saved, an enemy commander still alive, and a new weapon turned against you. We cannot say yet if your choice was wise. Only the next battles will tell. Steve nods. I can live with that, he says, as long as we keep asking the question, not just reaching for the easiest hard answer. Varro's lips twitch. You are a strange man, Captain Rogers, she says. In a better age, you might have been a noble or a saint. In this one, you are an anomaly we must use with care. Hark's mechadendrites tap the table. The anomaly is also a resource with limits, the Magos says. Every warp step strains his mind and body. Every use of the relic cracks it further. Continue at this pace and both will fail. We must define operating parameters. Vaughn nods. Then define them, he says. Hark's eye flickers. Maximum of 3 warp translations per standard day, he says. Each followed by medical and psychic evaluation. No translations within 3 hours of a null field pulse, lest harmonic feedback shatter his nervous system. Limit exposure to major warp storms to critical missions only. Inquisitor Varro to have veto power on any use. Varro inclines her head. I accept, she says. Captain? Steve thinks of rest. He thinks of going home, of choosing not to carry one more weight. Then he hears the distant guns again. He sees the terrified faces in the iron moor. He sees Karzel's hammer slamming into the floor. I don't like limits that keep me from helping, he says. But I get it. I've pushed my luck before. It breaks people around me when I fall. I'll live with these rules if it means I get to keep fighting longer. Vaughn looks back at the hollow. The question now, he says, is what the enemy does with what he has learned. As if in answer, the room shakes. The hollow shifts. New red lines appear along the surface of the world. New symbols flash in orbit. Vox units scream with overlapped reports. Lord General, an officer gasps over the intercom. New contact. Warp breach in high orbit. Enemy fleet elements translating directly inside the outer ring. They're using some kind of null corridor. Our sensors miss the build-up. Varro's eyes narrow. Karzel, she says. He used the data from the captain's translation to carve his own path. Counterbridge through the storm. Hark mutters Binharic curses. Logical, the Magos says. He identified an unguarded pattern and mirrored it. The fortress world is vulnerable through the very hole we opened. Vaughn's hands curl into fists. Soundful alert, he says. All batteries, prepare to fire on new contacts. The officer hesitates. There is more, my lord, he says. One of the new ships. It's broadcasting a signal on an old Imperial cipher. It claims to be a loyalist element, but the pattern is wrong, corrupted. Varro's face hardens. A smarter foe enters, she says softly. One who can lie with our own codes. She looks at Steve. Warsmith Karzel has learned from you, she says. He's not just hitting harder, he's hitting better. Up to now, Steve has clashed with Imperial leaders over mercy and survival, accepted strict limits on his warp powers, and watched Karzel turn his own tactics into a new threat. Null-tuned weapons and corridors that bypass the fortress world's defenses. Outside, in the storm-torn sky, black ships slide through impossible paths. One of them bears a symbol twisted from the Aquila. The double-headed eagle, but with chains wrapped around its necks and eyes sewn shut. Its voxhails sound like prayers spoken backward. On its bridge stands a figure in black armor marked with both the 8-pointed star of chaos and the cog of the Mechanicus. Its face is half metal, half scar, and its eyes burn with the same green light as Karzel's. This is no simple warship. This is a thinking weapon. It has studied Captain America's song in the warp, and it has come to answer. Steve feels the fortress world holding its breath. Sirens rise and fall across Marnian's gate. Guns turn to new angles. Vox traffic swells into a storm of voices. Every screen in the command center shows the same thing. Black ships sliding into orbit on impossible paths, wrapped in torn light. On the main hololith, the largest ship glows blood red. It looks like an Imperial cruiser at first. Long hull, side gun decks, a proud Aquila on the prow. But chains wrap its frame end to end. Eyes burn where sensor masts should be. The Aquila's two heads are blind and bound. Margos Hark taps the image with a mechadendrite. Primary threat, he says. Hairtech arc engine. Class unprecedented. Cogitators suggest it was once a loyal Grand Cruiser, now welded to demon flesh and scrap code. It names itself the Chain of Judgment. Inquisitor Varro folds her arms. And its purpose, she asks. Hark's augmetic eye flickers. Preliminary readings show 3 main tasks, he says. First, penetrate our defense ring using null corridors. Second, overwrite orbital stations and macro cannon platforms with corrupted command code. Third, inject memetic heresy into every vox and screen on this world. Steve frowns. Memetic what? He asks. Poisoned ideas, Barrow says. Words built, like viruses, images that make loyalty rot. Chaos does not only break bodies, it breaks truth. On a side screen, Steve sees its start. A tactical feed should show firing arcs. Instead, for 1 second, it shows a clear image of the Golden Throne. The Emperor sits upright, eyes open, smiling gently. He speaks, but the sound is wrong, just a little too smooth. Chains creep up the throne's sides. The eyes glaze over. Then the feed snaps back. How is that getting in here? Steve asks. Hark answers. The arc engine rides a null path, he says. Our augurs see it as friendly. Its signal smells like a blessed ship, because it copied a pattern we let into the warp. His mechadendrite points at Steve's shield. Your pattern, he says. Barrow's gaze fixes on Steve. It is using you as camouflage, she says. Your relic cuts safe tracks through the storm. Warsmith Kazel and his pet Hairtech have shaved pieces off those tracks. They wrap this ship in them. To our systems, it looks almost loyal. Steve's gut twists. So if I had never come, he says quietly, this thing wouldn't have this trick. Maybe not, Varro says. Or chaos would have found another door. It always does. What matters is what you do now that you are here. Lord General Vaughn studies the hollow. Standard answer is to target it with every gun we have, he says. Turn it into scrap. Standard answer will turn us into scrap as well, Hark says. If we hit it with full fire, it will redirect half the power back along its hooks into our own stations. We will crack our ring with our own guns. So we need a knife, not a hammer, Vaughn says. He looks at Steve. A small force, straight to its heart. Kill its master, break its hold. Who can do that? Selin steps forward. The librarian still looks worn from the last translation, but his eyes are clear. We can, he says. Him and I. He nods to Steve. We bored through its own null corridor, Selin says. Not in a ship, in the warp. The relic will find the path. I will steer. We enter its command sanctum. We cut the throat. Hark shakes his head. Any Astartes teleportarium will fail, he says. Our beams scatter in those corridors. I did not say we use your beams, Selin says. We use his. He taps the shield. Varro's eyes narrow. You want to send the anomaly into a ship built from his own signature, with a mind that has studied him, she says. That is either bravery or madness. In this age, Selen says. They are often the same. Vaughn looks at Steve. You opened a door into our storm, Vaughn says. Will you walk through the one the enemy built from it? Steve looks up at the hollow. The chain of judgment crawls through orbit like a predator wrapped around a wounded prey animal. Every few seconds, Vox bands flicker again with almost right prayers. He thinks of the radio back home, once used for music and news, nearly turned into a tool for Hydra. He remembers the taste in his mouth when he saw his own face on a propaganda poster. If that ship gets full control of your messages, he says, it'll make your own people help kill you. I can't let that stand. He rests the shield on the table. I'll go, he says. But this time, we plan for the fact they can hit my off switch. I'm no use to anyone knocked out on the floor. Varro nods. Then we plan, she says. And we decide how far you are allowed to go before we pull your plug. The briefing room is smaller and dimmer. Only Steve, Selen, Varro, Hark, Dalos, and Mara stand around the hollow. Inside, view plans of the chain of judgment swim in green lines. A central cathedral hall, cog altars, a throne grown from cables and bone. Hark points to the dais. Here sits Magister Arch, Heretic Varrock Nullborn, he says, former Magos of the Lathian Forge cluster, declared heretic 2 centuries ago, thought dead, now clearly welded into that Arc engine's logic core. Varro adds the human part. He is not a simple tech priest gone rogue, she says. He believes the Imperium is broken because it sacrifices blindly. He wants a perfect machine state that sacrifices with full knowledge. He will try to sell you that as kindness. Mara snorts. Kindness with a bolt to the back of the head, she says. Steve's jaw tightens. He'll hit my mind as hard as my body, he says. We saw that in the Iron Maw. I need to know the rules before we go in. Varro nods once. This is where we agree on lines, she says. On this ship there will be slaves, half-turned tech priests, servitors who were once men. You cannot free them all. If you stop for every chain, the Arc engine finishes its work. Marnian's gate dies. Her eyes are hard. If you see a choice between freeing a few and cutting the main link in time, you cut the link, she says. You understand? Steve doesn't answer at once. He looks at the hollow. He thinks of the eyes he saw in the Iron Maw, the way those people looked at him when he broke their chains. I understand, he says at last, but I'm not making that promise in cold blood from a safe room. Out there, I'll do what I can to save who I can. I won't throw away the whole mission. I also won't pretend not to see people if I can help them and still win. Varro studies him. Good, she says. You are not one of us. You should not think exactly like us. Just know that if we all think like you, we lose. If none of us think like you, we become the very thing we fight. That balance is why I let you speak in these councils. Selen taps the shield again. One more thing, he says. The brand on your soul is already stressed. Varrock and Kazel both tuned weapons to your pattern. Each warp step pulls at that brand. If it snaps, the relic and the warp will have a straight road into you. Hark clicks his side mechadendrites. So we set hard limits, the Mago says. 1 translation in, 1 out. No more. No direct warp use inside the Arc engine's core. No calling on the relic in panic. Inquisitor holds veto. Varro nods. Agreed, she says. She looks at Steve. If you break that rule, if I feel the brand tear, I will burn you. Even if you are in the middle of saving this world. Do you understand? Steve meets her gaze. He remembers Strange, warning him once about bargains he could not unmake. I understand, he says. You don't have to like me. You do have to trust me to mean it. Dalos puts a fist to his chest. The Imperial Fists will stand with you, he says. We have held doomed walls. We know when duty is ugly. Mara checks her rifle. And I'll be there to shoot anything that starts preaching, she says, including you, if I have to. Steve lets out a breath. Then let's go, he says. The translation chamber is lined with seals and prayers. Candles burn in niches. Servo skulls chime binary litanies. The floor is marked with concentric circles of ink and wax. Steve stands at the center, shield on his arm, Selin at his side, the kill team in a tight ring around them. Varro stands by the armored door. Last chance to change your mind, she says. Steve smiles, just a little. Every time I had a last chance, I walked through the door, he says. It hasn't killed me yet. Yet, she says. Remember, one step in, one step out. No more. Selin raises his staff. Focus on the throne, the librarian murmurs. On the mind that sits in it, on the cables running through the hull. Steve pictures the hollow until it feels like he can see it, even with eyes closed. The crystal in the shield grows hot. Blue light seeps through the cracked star. For a moment, the chamber wavers. The air feels thin. Selin shouts a word. The world tears. They stand in a hall that feels like a machine god's nightmare. Cog altars line the walls, covered in spidery script. Chains hang from the ceiling, each ending in a skull plugged into hot metal. The air tastes like burnt oil and copper. At the far end rises the throne. It is grown from bone and steel, tubes and cable. In it sits Varrock Nullborn. Half of his body is machine, all pistons and gears. The other half is rotted flesh stitched together with wire. One eye is a lens, the other is a black hole. He smiles. Anomaly, he says. His voice is human, mechanical, and whispering all at once. Welcome home. Dalos raises his bolter. Magister Arch-Heretic Varrock, the sergeant says. By the Emperor's word, you die today. Varrock ignores him. He looks only at Steve. You have no idea how loud you sing in the warp, he says. Every step you take screams. Every choice you make leaves patterns. I have read them all. Steve lifts his shield. Then you know I'm not here to talk, he says. Varrock laughs softly. Everyone says, that, he says. But all fights are about belief. The room wakes. Turrets drop from the ceiling. Warped servitors lurch from alcoves, blades for arms, cables trailing from their backs. Servo skulls spray gouts of warp fire. Advance, Dalos shouts. The kill team moves as one. Garen's heavy bolter roars, tearing apart turrets. Tiber and Hess pick off servitors and glowing control nodes. Mara's shots take skulls out of the air. Selin throws up a shimmering psychic barrier that catches the first wave of witchfire. Steve pushes forward behind the shield. Bolter rounds slam into it. The crystal bends them aside, though the light around it flickers. The air here is thick with null cold, like the echo of Karzel's hammer. Varrock raises one cable arm. Needle-tipped fibers spread like fingers. See your floor, he says. He snaps his fingers. A wave of focused emptiness slams into Steve. It is not as wide as the hammer blow in the iron maw. It is sharper. It snakes along his nerves and grabs his brand. For a moment, Steve cannot feel the shield at all. The blue light dies. His muscles go slack. He drops to one knee. Captain, Selin cries. Varrock's lens eye glows brighter. You are designed around a lie, the heretic says. You think you can fight a war like this without trading lives. You cannot. No one can. The Imperium at least admits it. It counts bodies and moves on. You pretend you don't count, but you do. You must. Let me free you from that hypocrisy. The world tilts. Steve is not in the hall for a moment. He stands on a wall of Bastion Primus. Shells fall. He sees a gap in the line. He sees a wounded squad in front of him. If he goes to them, the gap widens. If he stays on the wall, they die screaming in the mud. Then the view zooms out. The whole hive falls because of the gap. Millions die in the lower levels, crushed, burned, sacrificed. You cannot see all outcomes, Varric whispers. But I can. I am a machine built from logic and demon sight. Link your shield to my throne. Become my voice. You give the orders. I calculate who must die. Together we make a clean world. No more doubt, only necessity. The vision hurts because it is close to thoughts Steve has pushed down 100 times. He tastes bile. Clean worlds built on piles of bodies. I've seen that, he mutters. It always starts with good words. He forces air into his lungs. No, he says. Varric's smile thins. Another null pulse hits. This one is worse. The brand inside Steve feels like it rips. The cracked crystal flares red and blue at once. For a second, the whispers of the warp rush in, eager, pressing. You could save more. You could stop this stupid empire from eating itself. Just give up the rule. Trade lives properly. He staggers, but does not fall. I'm not a god, he growls. I don't get to decide who is worth more. All I can do is stand where it's worst and hold the line. Varric's cables whip, forward. They stab for Steve's chest. He manages to jam the shield between them and his heart. The needles sink into the crystal instead. The world explodes in light. Raw energy rips back along Varric's cables. He screams. The chain of judgment groans as arcs of power race through its guts. Sigils on the walls flare white, then blacken. Selin seizes the opening. He thrusts his staff forward and shouts one short, sharp word. Golden light bursts from the tip. It is not the cool light of a psychic trick. It feels heavy and warm at once. For a heartbeat, Steve feels a vast mind touch the edge of his own. Tired, burning, watching. The light slams into Varric and his throne. Demonic symbols burn away. Metal cracks. For one breath, Steve sees a shadow behind the heretic, towering, crowned, cloaked in stars and chains of light. Then bolt of fire drowns it out. Now, Dalos bellows. The kill team pour shells into Varric. Hest hurls a melter charge at the base of the throne. The heretic shrieks, half in rage, half in static. You could have fixed it, he screams at Steve. You could have made the galaxy obey. Remember that when the fools waste your gift. The charge detonates. The throne and Varric vanish in a ball of white heat. The hall shakes. Turrets die. Servitors fall. Servo skulls drop like stones. The null pressure drops away. Codex note. Destruction of a heretic logic throne can overload demon-encoded scrap code, but also drives hostile resonance into any linked xenotech, increasing long-term corruption risk. Steve hits the floor. He cannot feel his fingers. The shield lies beside him, star-split wider. Bands of gold and black iron are already forming around it as Hark's distant machine rights clamp down, called through the brand. Selene collapses to one knee. Blood runs from the librarian's nose and ears. His psychic hood smokes. He looks dazed but alive. The Emperor. Watched, he whispers, just for a moment. The chain of judgment groans again. Dalos hauls Steve up with one massive hand. On your feet, Captain, the sergeant says. We have to leave before this arc dies around us. Steve's legs barely work. Every step feels like walking through deep water. The whispers in his head are louder now, probing the new cracks in his soul. You could have said yes. You could have saved more. Next time you can. Just a little compromise. He clenches his jaw. No, he mutters again. Selin staggers close. I can still pull us, he gasps. Once. Only once. Steve nods. Do it, he says. Selin grips his shoulder. He reaches for the warped path Steve's shield cut on the way in. The brand burns bright and crooked as it strains. For a 6 second, Steve feels himself brush against something howling. Then the world tears again. He wakes in the Medici ward. White light, metal walls, the steady beep of machines, the smell of antiseptic and incense. Everything hurts. His muscles ache like he ran for days. His skull throbs. There is a strange weight in his chest, as if someone set a stone there. He turns his head. The shield sits on a stand. It is wrapped in bands of gold and black iron etched with tiny prayers. The star is clearly cracked, fused back together by metal veins. Inside, the tesseract shard glows in slow pulses, half blue, half a dull, angry red. Varro stands at the foot of the bed. Her armor is scuffed. There are dark circles under her eyes. How long? Steve croaks. 2 days, she says. We thought you might not wake. The Medici bet against you. I did not. He tries to smile. What happened to the ship? He asks. Destroyed, she says. When you and Selin broke Varrock, the chain of judgment lost its mind. It tore itself trying to rewrite its own logic. Now it is a dead ring of metal around our world. Our guns are ours again. The mimetic signal faded with it. And the others? He asks. Selin lives, but only just, she says. He is in a deep sleep. Hess lost an arm. Garen's lungs are burned. They will live, though the chapter's apothecaries will be busy. She looks at the shield. And you are changed, she says. He follows her gaze. I can feel it, he admits. Like there's a door inside me now. If I open it, something on both sides will rush through. Varro nods. Hark and the chaplains say your relic is now half tool, half trap, she says. Varroc's logic and Karzil's null pattern burned into it. The brand we put on your soul twisted to hold it back. You are not corrupted, yet. But the line is thinner now. She steps closer. Tell me honestly, she says. When he offered you a clean world bought with hard math, did you want it? Steve thinks of the vision, the little girl, the wall, the hive. Yes, he says, for a second, because I'm tired of watching people die when I make the best call I can. I'd be lying if I said it didn't hit something. Varro's face does not change. That is why you are dangerous, she says. Not because you are cruel, because you are kind. Kind people are the easiest to twist with there was no other way. She takes a breath. I could order you killed right now, she says. Every test says you are closer to the edge than before. The safest move, in our old logic, is to burn you and your relic together and hope the problem ends there. Steve stares at the ceiling. Then why don't you? He asks. Because something else happened in that hall, she says. Every astropath on this world felt it. For a heartbeat, the Emperor's tarot flared white. Cards that have not moved in 1,000 years shifted, and we got a message. She produces a data slate. It came in fire, she says. The words are simple. She reads, The anomaly who bears the broken star will come to Terra, she recites. He will stand before the golden throne. In his light, his path will be chosen. Until then, he is not to be destroyed, altered, or hidden. He is to be guarded and brought. She looks up. In plain speech, she says, the Emperor of Mankind has called you to him. Steve swallows. The man on the throne, he says. The one holding the warp back. The same, she says. Or his will, carried through old channels. Either way, no one on this world will dare ignore it. He thinks of the warm golden flash. Maybe he already stuck his nose in, Steve says quietly. In that hall, when Selin shouted, felt like someone older than all this was watching. Varro's mouth twitches. I was in the chapel when the light came, she says. Every candle went out. The icons shook. In the smoke, I saw a shadow with a cloak of stars, holding a shield with an eagle and a star. I do not like visions. They make faith harder, not easier. But I cannot pretend it was nothing. She straightens. Marnion's gate owes you its life, she says. Lord General Vaughn has ordered that no one here chain you. Even Confessor Malkian has stopped shouting for your head for now. But we cannot keep you. If you stay, you will save more lives for a time. And every step will pull you closer to the crack inside you. Terra is the only place where a choice bigger than mine can be made about you. Steve looks at the shield again. He thinks of kings. I don't like the idea of one man on a throne deciding everything for everyone, he says. Varro actually smiles, just a little. Then you should fit right in with half the saints and none of the high lords, she says. Tell him that when you see him. He huffs a breath that might almost be a laugh. Someone has to, he says. And if there's even a chance I can lean on him to treat your people as people, not just bodies in a ledger, I have to take it. He swings his legs off the bed. Pain knifes through him, but he stays upright. Can I walk? He asks. With help, Varro says. Dalos has already demanded the honor of escort. A fast cruiser will take you. A black ship will meet you en route. You will see how the Imperium really handles souls. She turns to go, then pauses. Captain, she says. Back on the surface, you told Callan you were no lord. Whatever happens on Terra, remember that. When she is gone, the ward feels very quiet. The whispers from the cracked shard brush his thoughts again. You could shape them. You will stand before their god. You could take it all. Steve sets his hand on the shield. I'll stand there, he says softly. I'll speak my mind. But I'm not here to wear a crown. I'm here to stop this from eating them alive. Up to now, Steve has boarded the demon ship Chain of Judgment, faced and refused the cold logic of the heretic Varrock, taken a deep psychic and moral wound as his shield and soul crack, and received a summons to Terra itself, where the Emperor of Mankind will decide whether he is weapon, heresy, or something new. The ship that carries them to Terra is a spear of steel and prayer. Its name is the Vow of Bastion. It pulls away from Marnion's gate under a sky still scarred by warp light and drifting wreckage. Gun batteries thunder in salute. Vox choirs sing. On the command deck, Lord General Vaughn and Confessor Malkian watch it go with mixed fear and hope. Steve watches from a small viewing port. Below, the fortress world glows with weak lights. Scar lines mark where Kazil's forces hit the hives. Somewhere down there, Callan and the other troopers still stand their posts. Up to now, Steve has helped save a fortress world, fought heretics and demon engines, and been summoned to Terra by a message tied to the Emperor himself. He turns away from the window. The Vow of Bastion is not a simple warship. It carries an elite honor guard of Imperial Fists, led by Brother Sergeant Dalos. It carries Inquisitor Elira Varro and a small staff. It also tows a black ship, a dark, silent vessel full of psychers bound for Terra, watched by pale warriors with dead, cold eyes. Sisters of Silence. Steve feels their effect the first time he passes one in a corridor. The air around her is thin. Colour seems washed out. The small hum of the shard in his shield goes quiet. His thoughts feel strangely clear and empty, like a room with all the furniture removed. She looks at him with no emotion at all, then walks on. He lets out a breath he did not know he held. Blanks, Varro says behind him. Nulls. Their very souls are empty. The warp cannot touch them. Even gods find them hard to look at. They are our last walls against corruption. Do they choose this? Steve asks. Some do, Varro says. Some are taken young for the black ships. If they survive what comes after, they serve. It is not a gentle life, but it is needed. He glances down the corridor where the sister is already gone. Needed is a word that hides a lot of pain, Steve says. Yes, Varro says. That is why I'm glad you hate it. The ship has a small chapel. It is nothing like the vast cathedrals of Marnion's Gate. This one is a simple metal room with a few icons on the walls and a small altar of steel. A single candle burns, its flame steady even as the ship shivers with translation. Steve sits on a bench near the back. Dalos kneels near the altar, helmet off, head bowed. A thick book lies open in his huge hands. His lips move silently with the words. After a time, Dalos closes the book and turns. You do not kneel, the Space Marine says, without anger. I don't know your prayers, Steve says. And if your God is watching, he already knows what's in my head. Dalos studies him. You are bold, he says, to speak of the Emperor that way, on the ship that carries you to him. Steve shrugs. Where I'm from, we don't pretend trust by copying moves, he says. If I kneel, it should mean something. Right now, all I can say is this. If he's really holding back all that horror, I respect the hell out of him. But I don't know him yet. Dalos chuckles, a low rumble. There are many men on Terra who have prayed their whole lives and still say they do not know him, he says. So perhaps you are more honest than some saints. He leans back against the bench. You carry yourself like a commander, Dalos says. You carry guilt like one too. I saw your face when Varro read the Emperor's summons. You looked afraid. Steve looks at the small candle. I've followed leaders who turned out to be cowards, he says. And I've watched people put men like me on pedestals we didn't deserve. I don't want to find out the man on that throne is just another one of those. And I don't want to become one either. You think you might? Dalos asks. Steve thinks of Varroc's offer, of the whisper that he could fix the galaxy if he just let go of his rules. Yes, he says simply. That's why I need someone to tell me no when I go too far. That's why I didn't break out of the Medicae and run back to the front. Limits. Dalos nods. The codex we follow has many rules, the sergeant says. But my Primarch also wrote this. Know when to break a wall to save a city. You bring walls and cities into question. I do not know yet if that is holy. But my gut says the Emperor would rather have one man before him who argues than a million who just nod. The Medicae Bay is busy even in transit. Wounded troopers from Marnion's Gate lie on bunks or in stasis fields. Servitors move between them with tools and vials. Two Sisters Hospitaller, warrior nuns in white and red, tend to the worst cases. Steve walks between the beds. Many of the soldiers nod at him as he passes. Some try to sit up. One starts to cry quietly and presses a small Aquila to his chest. Saint, the man whispers. Living saint. Steve stops. I'm not a saint. I'm just a man who got thrown through a storm. The man smiles through tears. My family was in High Fosse. They said the Black Legion was going to crack it. Then word came over the Vox. You and the Fists broke the Iron Moor's guns. Fosse still stands. Thank you, my lord. Steve swallows. What's your name? He asks. Rain, the man says. 317th Bastion Rifles. Rain, Steve says. You held your part of the line. I held mine. That's all this is. Don't let anyone tell you different. He leaves Rain and keeps walking. Near the far wall, he finds Callan. The young trooper's arm is in a sling. A fresh scar runs down the side of his face. He grins when he sees Steve. "Captain," Callan says, "didn't think I'd see you again." "Glad you're still here," Steve says. "How's the arm?" "Medici says I'll keep it," Callan says. "Might not shoot a straight, but I can still hold a laser gun and cry for the Emperor." He hesitates. "They say you're going to Terra," Callan says, "to stand before him." "That's the plan," Steve says. Callan looks down at his hands. "Will you ask him something for us?" he asks. "For the people down there. Ask him if he still sees us, or if we're just numbers on a slate now." Steve feels his throat tighten. "I'll ask," he says, "and I'll tell him your name." Callan smiles faintly. "Then whatever happens to me, I'll have been heard," he says. Steve squeezes his shoulder and moves on, carrying that quiet request like another weight in his pack. Mid-voyage, the warp grows restless. Steve feels it in his bones before the sirens sound. The Geller field, the bubble of normal space that protects the ship from the warp, hums louder. Lights flicker. Vox units snap with static. On the bridge, Magos Enginzirs chant louder. The ship's captain, a lean woman with iron studs in her skull, barks orders. Dalos and his fists stand ready in case something gets through. Varro reaches for a rail. Translation currents rising. Hark's voice crackles over Vox. Warp density spike. This is not natural drift. Something is pushing against the field from outside. Steve steadies himself. He feels the shard in his shield heat up, even through its new metal banding. The brand in his soul tugs, as if something is hooking into it from the storm. "Could this be Karzel again?" he asks. Varro shakes her head. "He would not risk this close to Terra," she says. "Something else smells you now." The lights go out. For a moment, the only sound is the hum of engines and distant prayers. Then a new light fills the bridge. It is not white or gold. It is a cold blue, lit from within like ice over deep water. It pours in through the viewing screens, even though outside is only warp mist. A shape steps out of that light. It is a man in armor. At first glance, he looks like Steve. Same height, same build, same jawline. His armor is a sleek mix of old Earth design and Imperial style. Blue plates, white star, red stripes, but wrapped in black chains of metal and script. A double-headed eagle is stamped on his chest, but its wings are pinned down by a coiled serpent. His shield is like Steve's, but with a different star. The points are bent inward, hooked like barbs. He smiles. "Well," the mirror says, "this is strange." Dalos lifts his bolter at once. "Identify yourself," the sergeant says. The mirror ignores him. He looks at Steve. "I'm you," he says simply, "from where the storm went another way." Steve tightens his grip on his own shield. "What do you call yourself?" he asks. The mirror tilts his head. "Some call me Regent," he says. "Some call me the Justicar. The warp calls me the Shield of Chains, but I remember the name Steve Rogers." Varro steps in front of the bridge controls. "Warp projection," she says. Thought graft. Do not believe what it shows." Mirror Steve chuckles. "Oh, I'm more than a thought," he says. "In my branch, when the cube broke the sky, I fell harder. I took the deal Varric just offered you. I linked my shield to the machine that counts lives. I took the throne when their emperor finally failed, and I made the hard calls you keep dodging." He steps closer. "You saved Marnion's gate and left Karzel alive," he says. "How many worlds will he burn now? Because you couldn't trade a few thousand souls today? How many Kellins will never be born because you are afraid to be cruel? Steve feels everyone on the bridge watching him. I'm not afraid to be cruel, he says. I'm afraid to be lazy. It's easy to say, there was no other way when you never look for one. Mirror Steve's eyes flash. I looked, he snaps. I saw every way. I had the machine. I had the God's own numbers. There is no path through this galaxy where everyone gets to live free and safe. You choose who dies early and who dies late. The only question is whether you admit it. He lifts his chained shield. You're going to Terra, he says. You'll stand before a man who made the choice I did long ago and wrapped it in myth. He will offer you 3 roads. You know that already. One of them will be mine. Take it. Stop pretending you can be a hero in a slaughterhouse. The air around him crackles. The Sisters of Silence on the black ship move into position. Their null auras press against the bridge. The warp light flickers. Whatever you are, Varro says, you are not welcome here. Be gone. Mirror Steve looks at her. You'll be one of the first he breaks, Inquisitor, he says, when he sees that your faith kills as neatly as chaos does. Enjoy these last days of feeling pure. He turns back to the real Steve. Last chance to understand, he says. You can carry all of this alone. Be the knife that cuts away the weak so the species survives. Or you can keep sharing the load until it crushes everyone, including you. He lifts his shield higher. Show them who you really are, he says. Fight me. The warp surges. The 2 shields slam together. The bridge groans. Glass cracks. Men and women fall to their knees. Darlow steadies himself and uses his own shield to cover a crew pit, but he cannot get close. The air around the 2 Steves is full of swirling light. Steve feels the impact right down his spine. His own shard flares blue and gold. The mirrors burns cold and green. Every blow is not just metal on metal. It is idea on idea. People get a say, Steve shouts, slamming the rim of his shield into the chain-wrapped star, even when they choose wrong. People are bad at math, the mirror snarls. They choose pretty lies over hard numbers. I saved more than you ever will. Steve's arm shakes. For a second, the chain shield presses his back. He sees flashes of another timeline. Worlds not destroyed because he ordered others burned. Peace in some hives, built on ash elsewhere. His knees start to buckle, and then the temperature in the room changes. It is small at first, a warmth around his heart, a pressure behind his eyes. The candle in his memory in the small chapel burns brighter. The lights on the bridge go out again. For a moment, everything is dark. Then a single symbol appears. Not on the screens, not in the air. In every mind that can see the warp. A golden figure on a throne of light and wires. A skull-faced crown. Hands outstretched, both blessing and command. A single thought rolls through the room like thunder. Reach the throne. The mirror. Steve snarls and staggers back. What? He starts. The Sisters of Silence step forward as one. Their null auras expand. Warp light shrivels. The chain shield's glow sputters. The mirror's form flickers, glitching between full armor, bare skull, and static. This is not your path, Varro says, voice low. Begone, Echo. Steve pushes. His shield slams into the other. The chain star shatters like glass. The mirror dissolves into shards of blue and green light that the null auras crush to nothing. The warp goes quiet. The ship lurches as the Geller field slams back to full power. Steve falls to one knee, panting. Varro grips a rail hard enough to whiten her knuckles. Delos lowers his bolter slowly. Crew members look at each other, pale and shaking. Hark's voice crackles over the Vox again. We passed through a minor warp shear, he says. Readings suggest an intrusive thought form was repelled. Geller field stable. Varro looks at Steve. You saw him too, she says. Yeah, Steve says. A version of me that took the throne and never let go. And the Emperor, she asks, spoke to you? Steve nods slowly. Not words, he says. Just push, like a hand on my back, telling me to keep walking, not get stuck fighting myself. Varro lets out a breath. Then we are truly summoned, she says. We will not waste this on ghosts of paths not taken. Terror fills the forward views like a rising god. At first, Steve sees only light, a soft golden haze that wraps the planet like a veil. Then it thins, and he sees the world below. It is not green and blue like his Earth. Clouds wrap dirty continents crowded with city lights. Great scars mark ancient wars. Rings of orbital platforms circle it like a steel crown. Massive ships patrol the space around it, each the size of the Vow of Bastion or larger. The Phalanx, a fortress in the shape of a city ship, hangs like a dagger near the planet's pole. Holy Terror, Dalos says quietly. Birthplace of mankind, seat of the master of mankind. The Vow of Bastion creeps forward. Clearance codes are sent and challenged. Gun batteries track their path. Sisters of Silence stand at the viewports, hands folded, as if their very presence is part of the code. Steve presses a hand to the glass. It looks tired, he says. It is, Varro says. 10,000 years of holding the line. Every war we fight is to buy this rock one more day. If it falls, mankind falls with it. As they descend, more detail appears. Vast hive cities cover whole continents. A single structure, the Imperial Palace, sprawls across one, larger than anything Steve has ever seen. Its walls are mountains. Its towers pierce the clouds. Its gates glow with constant fire. On one edge stands a gate taller than most cities, the Eternity Gate. Gold-armored giants stand before it. The Adeptus Custodes, the Emperor's personal guard. Around them move small bands of Sisters of Silence, their presence like drops of dark ink in a pool of gold. The Vow of Bastion settles into a high landing cradle. Engines die, hatches open. Air tinged with incense and old dust floods in. Steve walks down a long ramp. Dalos and his fists march at his back. Varro walks at his side. A squad of Sisters of Silence waits at the bottom, led by a tall woman with a plain face and a blade across her back. Beside them stands a custodian. He is taller than a space marine, but built with more grace. His armor is gold from helm to greaves, etched with small eagles and laurels. A long guardian spear rests in his hands. His eyes are sharp and old. He looks Steve up and down. Captain Steve Rogers, the custodian says. Anomaly, warp anchor, bearer of the cracked star. I am Shield Captain Acastus of the Adeptus Custodes. By the throne's will, I am your escort to the Master's presence. Steve nods. Do I bow? He asks. Acastus's mouth twitches. You stand, he says. You kneel only if he makes you. Walk. The path to the throne is a pilgrimage through stone and time. They pass through the Eternity Gate. Its doors are covered in carvings of old wars, old heroes, old monsters. Priests chant on balconies. Incense falls like mist. Inside halls stretch for miles. Every wall is covered with statues and murals. Some show the Emperor in armor, leading armies. Others show nameless soldiers dying in thousands. Every few steps, small shrines burn with candles left by those who will never reach this far. Sisters of Silence flank the path, their null auras pressing close. Steve's shard is almost silent. Only a faint, slow pulse remains. Varro walks in silence for once. Dalos's face is unreadable. At one point, a group of pilgrims passes on a side walkway far above. They throw petals and cry out when they see the gold of the Custodes and the foreign blue and red of Steve's armor. "Saint," someone whispers again. Steve keeps his eyes on Acastus's back. The last chamber is vast and dim. At its center sits the golden throne. It is less a chair and more a mountain of metal and bone. Cables as thick as trees run from it into the walls and ceiling. Skulls and sensor arrays bristle from its sides. A great beam of light pours from a point above it into the crown of the figure seated there, the Emperor of mankind. His body is a withered thing of gold and bone. His eyes are empty sockets blazing with light. His skull is wrapped in a crown of iron and gold. His hands rest on the arms of the throne, fingers like claws, nails fused with metal. The air hums. Acastus stops a set distance away. He kneels, head bowed. Varro drops to one knee. Even Dalos kneels, bare head bent. The Sisters of Silence bow their heads. Steve is the only one left standing. For a long moment, nothing happens. He feels the weight of 100 guns and 1,000 eyes, physical and psychic, on him. Part of him wants to kneel just to make it stop. He takes a slow breath. "I was told to come," he says, voice quiet but steady. "So I'm here." Something turns. It is not the Emperor's head, but the focus of his light. It shifts so that Steve feels it on him, like a sunbeam through thick glass. The brand in his soul flares. The room vanishes. He stands in a void filled with stars. Before him is the Emperor, not as a corpse on a throne, but as a tall figure wrapped in golden armor and light. His face is hard to see, always shifting between warrior, king, and something far older. There is no sound. Words are not needed. Images pour into Steve instead. He sees the Emperor walking among primitive humans, guiding them, hiding his nature. He sees him leading armies to break monsters, aliens, and other gods. He sees him making deals he hates because the other choices are worse. He sees Terra burned and rebuilt a dozen times. He sees worlds saved by ruthless choices and worlds lost because mercy opened a door. He feels the weight of every human soul like stones piled on the Emperor's back. One sense runs through all of it. Duty. A duty so heavy it has carved him down to bone and light. Then the images shift. The Emperor shows Steve his own path. Brooklyn alleys. A weak boy standing up to bullies. Super soldier labs. War in Europe. Hydra. Space. Aliens. Thanos. The choice to step into the storm for a world he loved. They show Marnion's Gate. Karzel. Varrock. The Mirror Steve. They show Callan's face asking, "Does he still see us?" Steve feels the Emperor's attention settle there. A thought presses into his mind. "I see them." It is not a loud shout or a whisper. It is a plain statement that feels like gravity. Then another thought follows. I cannot save them all. Images flash. Worlds burned under exterminatus. Worlds left to die because the fleets were needed elsewhere. Uphold Terra. Lose 5 planets. Save those worlds. Leave Terra open. He feels no joy in these choices. Only tired resolve. The last set of images are possible futures. In one, Steve turns away. He goes home. The warp storm snaps his path back. His memories of this place fade like dreams. Terror keeps burning souls without his hand on the scale. In another, he becomes like his mirror. He takes the throne or something like it. The Imperium becomes sharper, faster, less corrupt, and colder. Worlds die by clean order. People live longer, but with less choice. Freedom becomes a word in books. In a third, he sees a path made of broken lines. He sees himself walking between high lords and inquisitors, custodes and common soldiers, arguing, pushing, refusing to let either mercy or necessity become excuses. A slower change, messier, but with more voices heard. The Emperor does not tell him which is right. One last thought comes instead. Choose knowing this: victory is not clean. It is survival with a shape you can bear. The vision ends. He is back in the chamber. The light around the throne dims to its normal blaze. No one else seems to have moved. Acastus still kneels. Varro's head is still bowed. Darlos's lips move in a silent prayer. But Steve knows years of wait just passed between him and the figure on the throne. He goes to one knee, not because he was told to, but because he understands now that whatever else he is, the Emperor has carried more than any being should. "Thank you," Steve says quietly, "for not lying to me." In the days that follow, the ship's librarians and Mechanicus savants will say that the Emperor has woven a new pattern into Steve's brand and relic, tying them to the Golden Throne's light. He can now call down a narrow beam of that burning presence through his shield, burning chaos and strengthening human hearts in its path. But each use drains both him and the already strained systems of terror. The Custodes will decree that he may not use it except in moments of dire need, under watchful eyes, and never more than a handful of times before he returns to Terra for renewal. Steve will feel it as a new pulse in his chest, a reserve of fierce golden heat he can tap, at the cost of pain, exhaustion, and the risk of drawing every hungry thing in the warp to his position. As the echo of the vision fades, Steve feels the shield on his arm grow warmer. The cracked star now has a faint ring of gold around the blue and red, like a halo burned into the metal. The shard inside pulses in time with a distant rhythm, as if his heart and the throne's engines now beat together in some small way. Acastus rises. "The Master has looked upon you," the shield captain says. "His will is known to us." Varro lifts her head. "And to you?" she asks. Steve gets to his feet. "To me," he says. He showed the bill, and the fact that there is no way to walk off this field with clean hands. Varro searches his face. "And?" she presses. "And he still expects us to try," Steve says. "Not to give up and say, 'It's too hard, let the machine decide.' He expects us to know it hurts and choose anyway." Darlos smiles, just a little. "That sounds like him," the sergeant says. Acastus inclines his head. "The next step is yours, Captain Rogers," the custodian says. "He will show you 3 paths. High Lords, Inquisition, Mechanicus, Astartes. All will bend around those choices. You will not take them alone." Steve takes a slow breath. "I don't want to sit on that throne," he says. "But I can't walk away from what I've seen. So whatever paths he lays out, I'll pick the one where people keep a voice, even if it makes the numbers uglier." Varro's eyes narrow. "That path will hurt," she says. "I know," Steve says. "I'll need you to tell me when I'm about to turn into him." He nods toward the throne. "Or into my mirror." Varro is quiet for a moment. "Very well," she says. "I will be your accuser when needed, and perhaps your witness when you are right." They turn and walk out of the chamber, leaving the throne behind. Above and behind them, the Emperor of mankind sits unmoving. But his light has touched a man from another world, cracked but still standing. And in the deep currents of the warp, something inhuman and hateful shifts uneasily, sensing that the old game on the galactic board has gained a new piece. Steve, empowered and burdened by the Emperor's direct touch, walking away from the Golden Throne with a heart full of hard truths and the knowledge that his next choice will shape not just battles, but the future meaning of victory itself. They give him a day, not to rest, to think. Steve spends most of it in a small stone room high in the palace, with one narrow window that looks out over endless towers. The air smells of dust and incense, old stone and oil. A simple metal aquila hangs on the wall. There is a bench and a table, nothing else. Varro visits once. She sets a data slate down and does not sit. The Emperor will not call a council for you, she says. He has already done more than he has in centuries. Tomorrow, he will show you 3 paths. The choice will be yours, but the consequences will belong to all of us. She taps the slate. Here are summaries of what those paths might mean, she says. My best guesses, the High Lord's guesses. We cannot see as far as he does, but we see enough to fear and hope. Steve looks at the slate, then at her. You were there in the vision? He asks. No, she says. I got the edges, flashes, enough. She turns to go, then pauses. Whatever you pick, she says, I will not pretend it was easy. Remember that when people scream at you later for not choosing their pain instead. After she leaves, he reads. The slate lays out 3 headings in plain High Gothic and clipped low. Return, free hand, sanction throne. Under each are cold lines of text. Casualty estimates, warp risk, political shock. He reads it all. Then he sets the slate aside and just stares out at terror until the light fades and the towers are only black teeth in a smoggy dusk. He thinks of Brooklyn alleys and Marnion's gate streets. He thinks of Callan asking if the Emperor still sees them. He thinks of his own face wrapped in chains, telling him that numbers are everything. Next day is just when the palace bells say it is. Shield Captain Acastus and 2 custodes come for him. They walk in silence. The path is not the same as before, but it feels like the same weight. Halls lined with statues, murals of wars no one remembers, the air full of far-off chanting. Varro waits at a side door. She has no helm. Her face is set. This is the Hall of Weighing, she says. Not many come here. Fewer leave with their minds whole. Darlo stands behind her with 3 Imperial Fists in full armor. Mara leans against the wall, rifle slung, arms folded. Even she looks tense. You don't have to come in, Steve says to them. Darlo snorts. We have walked with you this far, he says. We will at least stand at the door when a god speaks. Varro's eyes hold his. I need to see the moment you choose, she says, so that when I accuse or defend you later, I know it firsthand. Steve nods. Then let's get it done, he says. Acastus opens the door. Inside, the chamber is dark and bare. No throne, no icons, just a wide empty floor and a single circle drawn in gold paint at its center. Step into the circle, Acastus says. You will not fall. You may wish you had. Steve steps in. The door closes behind him. Darkness drops. Light rises, not around him, inside his head. He's floating again in that star-filled void. The Emperor is there, not on the throne, but as a tall, armored figure of gold and shadow. This time, there are 3 paths visible under his feet. They stretch away like roads of light and ash, each marked with images that shift when Steve looks at them. The Emperor does not speak with words. Thoughts press into Steve's mind, shaped like simple statements. 3 paths, 3 fates, none clean. The first path glows blue for a moment. Images form. He sees his Earth, New York, busy and loud. Friends he left behind. Sam flying over a crowd. Bucky sitting on a bench, less haunted now. He sees portals closing. The storm that brought him here shrinking as if a door is being shut. He sees himself falling back through that storm. He lands in his own time. The tesseract shard in his shield burns away, used up. The memory of the fortress world fades like a dream when you wake. He still remembers pain, fire, a golden figure, but not the details. He fights new battles there, saved lives, new losses, a full life. On the far edge of that vision, he sees the Imperium without him. It staggers but holds. Marnion's gate falls later, after more blood, to a different assault. Kazel wins a world, then loses another. Varro hunts heretics until she dies alone on some forgotten rock. Callan dies on a wall, no one paints on a mural. Earth in his own time never knows any of this. He feels the thought behind the images. Return, protect one world, leave this age to its own. The second path burns red. He sees himself in his current armor, shield blazing with blue and gold, dropping alone onto battlefields across the galaxy. No banners behind him, no orders. He goes where screams are loudest, where chaos claws deepest. He tears open warp storms. He breaks chains. He stands in front of Exterminatus' orders and says no, daring ships to fire anyway. Word spreads. Some call him saint. Others call him heretic. Worlds light candles to him instead of the Emperor or as well as him. The Inquisition splits. Some try to use his legend. Others try to kill him. Civil wars start in his name and against it. On Terra, High Lords shout. The Custodes argue in low voices. The Emperor stays silent, letting the game play. Sometimes Steve wins big. He saves whole sectors that would have burned. Sometimes his choice not to pull a trigger lets a new threat rise behind his back. The Imperium fractures, but does not fall. Chaos grows where human unity cracks. Xenos empires rise in the gaps. He hears the thought. Free agent. Maximum leverage. Maximum chaos. The third path is gold and iron. He sees Terra again. He sees the throne as it is now, and then sees another seat built before it. Smaller. Less wrapped in wires. A chair, not a cage. He sees himself on that chair. His armor is changed. Blue, red, white, and gold blended with imperial symbols. The star and the aquila fused on his chest and shield. Custodes stand around him, swords and spears ready. He gives orders, not to squads, but to whole armies. He signs edicts. Some cancel planet kill orders when there are other options. Some strip power from lords who eat their own people. Some start relief for buried hives that have never seen sun. He also signs orders that send millions to war. He signs culls when chaos truly cannot be stopped without burning a world. He feels each one like a knife, but he signs. High Lords argue. The Inquisition snaps at his heels. Rogue traders curse his limits. Citizens watch their rations and their sons and daughters march and wonder if the new emperor is better or worse than the old one. On the far edge of that vision, centuries away, he sees small changes. Fewer worlds killed by panic. More worlds slowly made less cruel. Units formed to rebuild, not just burn. Laws that say an exterminatus order must have proof, not just fear. He hears the thought. Sanction servant, sit in the fire, change its shape. The Emperor lets the images fade. Then he does something Steve does not expect. He shows Steve the Emperor's own first choice, a flash of an older age. The Emperor could have stayed hidden, nudging from the shadows. He chose to step out, build an Imperium in his own name, and sit on the throne himself. It broke him. But without that, the warp would have eaten everything long ago. The thought is simple. No one is clean. Choose what you can carry. The vision fades. He is back in the dark room, on his knees in the circle. His eyes burn with tears he did not feel forming. The door opens. Varro steps inside. She sees his face and closes the door behind her. Acastus and Dalos, Stay outside. Well, she asks. He looks up at her. One road takes me home, he says. One lets me wander and break things with no boss. One puts me in the chair in front of him. Varro says nothing. He goes on. If I go home, he says, I save my world. Mine. Maybe I never even remember this place. Maybe that's kindness. For me. For them. He thinks of Callan's question. Of Rain in the medici ward. If I go home, he says softly, I leave yours to what it is now. Maybe it holds. Maybe it rots. I know enough to know I can't pretend I don't know. Varro nods once. And the second, she asks. I become your worst nightmare, he says. A living weapon with no leash. I'd save people. Lots of them. And I'd tear your Imperium in half while I do it. Some would call me savior. Others would call me traitor. They'd all have a point. He rubs his face. I'd get to keep my hands cleaner, he says. From far away. I could always say, that was their order, not mine, even as my actions force their hand. Varro's mouth tightens. That path is tempting because it looks like freedom, she says. But it is just another way of dodging the bill. You pay it later, and with interest. He nods. The third path? He starts, then stops. He looks at the floor. The third path puts me in charge, he says. Not over one world, over all this, but not as a god, as a man with a chain around his ankle, bound by laws, by your eyes, by his light. He glances up at her. Years later, the palace whispers a new name. Not just the Emperor, the twofold throne. The golden throne still burns in the dark, wires sunk deep into a withered giant. Before it stands a lower dais of black stone and gold. On that seat sits a man in blue, red, and white armor, trimmed now with eagles and seals. On his chest, the star and the aquila are fused. On his shield, the same symbol glows. Inquisitor Elira Varro reads the decree one last time before she seals it. No exterminatus, she says, without three things. Clear proof. No other way. And your signature. Steve, Regent of Mankind, Captain Emperor, Anomaly made law, nods. And if I'm gone, he asks. Then 2 custodes and 1 Sister of Silence must sign in your place, Varro says. No High Lord, no lone Inquisitor. No one hides behind we had no time anymore. He taps the edge of the shield. And every order like that is named, he says quietly. World, date, and why. In plain words. No more necessary losses in footnotes. Varro holds his gaze. And you will read every one, she says. I will, he says. Every time I pick up this pen, I remember their faces. On the far wall, Dalos waits in gold-trimmed yellow armor. The front needs you, my lord, the Space Marine says. Karzel pushes on the Adrast reach. His new null hammers bite hard. Steve stands. He is older. Lines mark his face. His step is still strong, but slower. The light in the cracked star pulses with a faint golden ring now, tied to the throne behind him. I'm not a god, he says, but I'm not staying in this chair while other people bleed for my rules. He raises the shield. Prepare the strike charter, he tells Varro. 1 warp translation. 1 throne flare if we have to. You get to drag me back if I push it. Varro almost smiles. I always have, she says. On a forgotten hive world far from Terra, Callan stands on a wall again. His hair is grey now. His laser gun is old. But his eyes are clear. Below, the fields are on fire where Tyranids burn. Above, a light cuts through the smoke. A burning line dropping from high orbit to the ground, leaving a path where men and women rally instead of run. On his vox bead, a clear, simple voice speaks. Hold the line, Captain Emperor Steve Rogers says. We don't trade lives. We spend them only when we must. Terror hears you. The symbol on every bunker and ration tin has changed over the years. The double-headed eagle still spreads its wings. But at its heart is a 5-pointed star. Children trace it on the backs of their hands. Priests draw it in the air. Troopers scratch it into shell casings before they load them. Does he see us? Callan's grandson once asked. Callan looks up at the light in the clouds. Yeah, he says. Someone up there does. And he argues for us. He lifts his rifle and joins the volley. By decree of the Regent, all exterminatus orders now require proof, shared burden, and a name. The Imperium still kills worlds, but never again by unseen hands.